Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Both Sides of the Conversation. Welcome to our Sunday chat. We gather here in this virtual space every Sunday at 2 p.m. I am your guest co-host, Danielle Tompkins, and the founder of Both Sides of the Conversation. And my co-host for today is
John Henry, co-founder of Both Sides of Conversation.
Both Sides of the Conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation. So please be respectful of that. Be respectful of the panelists, hosts, and participants. Healthy debates and conversation are encouraged. Don't personalize anything with anyone. Name calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming will not be allowed here. Your perspective is yours. It's not a prescription. You don't have to agree, but please show respect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We're going to have a phenomenal conversation with the disability community, talking to some phenomenal guests who's going to talk about some of the things that they've been through in the community when it comes to their disability and some of the support that they need from community. But before we get started, I just want to first thank everybody who showed out yesterday for the Solidarity event at City Hall Civic Center. I want to say thank you to the Human Rights Commission for putting on a phenomenal event as we merge together all of our communities to stop the violence, stop the hate that's going on in our community, especially in our Asian community. It was just a phenomenal event to see all of the different organizations out there supporting the community. I want to say thank you to Taquan Harrison, Shakira Simply, Collective Impact, Uncle Stank. They had a phenomenal team out there. Brittany, we had some YCD representative. We had Cole Tenderloin out there, Elgin Rose. A lot of people showed up, helped put these solidarity kits together for the community. There was books, young people coming out. It was a phenomenal event. We had our Native American culture out there, having spiritual being and drumming, different things of that nature. Phenomenal event. Just happy to see the people coming together, uniting and having conversations, being around each other, learning the different cultures, and learning some of the things, how we can help support each other moving forward with the solidarity. But with solidarity being said, this conversation is very important today because we also have to have solidarity for our disability community and making sure that they have the things that they need. When we can rally together for everything else, we need to also remember that we need to rally and support them because they are a part of our community, and some of the struggles and the things that they deal with sometimes it's unnecessary, sometimes it's unfair, and we have to lead with compassion, humility, and we have to make sure we have empathy when we're dealing with these type of situations in our community because they don't get to do some of the things that we're privy to do, and we need to be mindful of it and keep that in our mind. So just wanted to put that out there. Then also I want to say shout out to the City Eats for putting on a phenomenal event in LA this weekend, going from the Bay Area, going down there to impact that community in Skid Row, providing over 200 backpacks and over 100 something tents. We had barbers who came out to cut some of the people that are less fortunate to make them feel good because sometimes those type of events are needed. Sometimes getting a haircut, getting a care pack, getting some food. There was a lot of food vendors who came out to support those people in that community, making sure that they feel part of the community. And sometimes those little things make a difference. And then I want to say thanks to Keisha at 100% 110 Challenge. She pushed that movement and got the tents out there. They've been going all across from Stockton to Oakland, across the United States, getting tents and care packs to our people. So just want to say thank them for the phenomenal work that they're doing. And then I want to say finally, I want to give a shout out to my brother Uncle Damien at Us for Us for rallying the young people, going out and protest this past couple of days for the Dante Wright. We understand another brother was killed by the police and police brutality. We had a young 13-year-old man that was killed by police. We had a military veteran who was pepper sprayed and wrongfully arrested by police. We had another shooting here in the Bay Area by police. These conversations that we're going to be having moving forward is going to be very powerful. I just want to say shout out to Police Chief Scott of San Francisco. He came out to the event and he's putting together some conversations for us here at Both Sides of the Conversation because no matter what, we have to have a community and police engagement. I know sometimes community don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to deal with it. But in order to really make change and really start to get these officers and people to understand some of the things that's going on and how to deal with community, we have to have those conversations, and we will have those conversations. So hope you'll be a part of it. And I know yesterday the care packs, want to say thanks to the Mega Back family. The organization helped put together all of these wonderful solidarity kits with books and informations for the different communities, flashlights, whistles, so that people could be alerted when things is happening in the community, especially when our elders and people with disability are being attacked and robbed and things happen. It's unacceptable. We can't have it. So hopefully these whistles and lights and different things to get people aware of things that's going on is going to help people every little thing count. So just want to thank all the people that put those together. And we have a whistle here. And we're going to call to action for our disability community today, because this is a conversation that's need to be heard. We have some phenomenal people on. We're going to go ahead and let Danielle go ahead and start introducing them one by one. And then we're going to start today's conversation with the folks from our disability community. Go ahead, Danielle.
Thank you, John. Yes, we have some wonderful guests today on our show. Our first guest is Mr. James Johnson. Mr. James Johnson is an advocate for housing needs for the growing number of homeless people with disabilities in San Francisco. Mr. Johnson assists people who obtain permanent supportive housing that are homeless. He was featured in the San Francisco Examiner, highlighting San Francisco's struggles to meet the housing needs of the growing number of homeless people with disabilities. He understands the equity issue of being homeless and underserved and brings a lot of information, pictures, and facts to the table. Please welcome Mr. James Johnson to the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is James. Glad to be here.
All right.
Wonderful. Our next guest is Mr. Jamel Burrell. Mr. Jamel Burrell has worked closely with the Department of Modernization to ensure contractors' redevelopment plans for all units in common areas were in compliance with the ADA codes. He has worked with HUD Commissioner San Francisco City Hall to impress upon them the importance of enforcing policies instituted by the new private property owners and to ensure they are not in violation, of tenant rights. He has strategically negotiated in-home support services for people with special needs. He has mediated to resolve ongoing disputes between management, property owners, tenants, and members of HUD. Please welcome Mr. Jamel Burrell to the show.
Thank you for the intro. Hello, everybody.
Wonderful. And our next guest, Mr. Barry Axius, is the founder and CEO of the Voice of the Youth, a nonprofit organization which provides mentorship to youth and adults. He is also the founder of Black Blueprints, which is an organization dedicated to uplifting and educating Black people through social media, community events, and empowering apparel. Mr. Axius brings a voice of truth to the community. He is known for his motivational speaker series and being an activist for social justice and racial equality through his community forums and workshops. Additionally, he developed and created an impactful summer program for understanding the importance of a healthy body and healthy mind. Mr. Axius has proven to be the asset in educating our youth on what healthy lifestyle is. Through partnerships within the community, Mr. Axius has established and transformed narratives as well as lives. Please welcome Mr. Barry Axius to the show.
Barry Axius, thank you. Glad to be here.
So sorry about that.
That's all good.
And
people butcher my name all the time.
Oh, okay. I'm going to try to not do that anymore. Well, welcome. Also, last but not least, we have a special comedian in the house. His name is Insane Wayne, and he hails from Stockton, California. Please welcome Mr. Insane Wayne to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to get started, man. Thanks for having me part of this forum, man. This is something dope. And I hope everybody's tuning in and tapping in, man, so we can all learn a lot together.
All right. Thank you very much. So with that being said, you all, we're going to get started with this conversation. You guys know here at both sides of the conversation, our Sunday conversation is about a couple of things. We're trying to educate the community about the topic that we're talking about. We're trying to hear the problems, some of the issues within that topic. And then the third thing is we're trying to find a solution from the guest and the panelist perspective so that we can get that information to the right people that need to hear it. And then fourthly, we're trying to grab resources, and some of the panelists here will have resources. Maybe you're a person dealing with disability in the community, or maybe you're a new person that just become disabled and you don't really know how to navigate the system. So hopefully we have some people that's watching from different elected departments, and some of these people who handle this, maybe some social workers that can give you guys some information that will be on our YouTube and our live chat, putting information in there. If you guys have any resources or help, go ahead and make sure you put it in our live chat on our YouTube, and we'll get it up here to the panelists and to the guests out there so they can see how to navigate these systems. I know in some of these city departments, it is a challenge. I'm really familiar with San Francisco, and I know sometimes the websites, the 311, trying to connect with some of these department heads is a challenge, and we have to fix that, especially when people have challenging issues. Again, like I said, I know how it feels when you go into a building and the elevator's not working and you got to walk up 10 flights of stairs. You see how it feels. A person in a wheelchair don't have that option. So just imagine how they feel when they can't navigate through a building when something is working. So it's like it's time to really have this conversation. We got to really look at our government contracts with some of our contractors and some of our vendors. We have to make sure that we find a way that 3, 4, 5 weeks are not going by and elevators and lifts are still not working for our people with disabilities. It's a very, very important conversation today. I know we're going to start off with Insane Wayne today because he has a prior engagement that he needs to go to. So we're going to go ahead and start with him, get him started to talk about some of the things about himself, where he's at, some of the struggles, some of the things that he dealt with. We have a brother from Sacramento, Wayne from Stockton. We got San Francisco in the house representing. So you guys kind of get a good glimpse of what's going on here in the Bay Area from Sacramento on back down to San Francisco. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead, Wade, and let you go ahead and talk about, you know, your disability and some of the struggles that you face and some of the help or support you need, because this is about community getting behind you all and rallying and support and making sure that you guys all your needs is being met by everybody.
Cool. Yeah. My name is Insane Wayne. Off top, you guys know that. I'm a stand-up comedian. I was shot in 2004. That's how I became disabled in my wheelchair. I've been doing comedy for like 18 years now. I was doing comedy before I got shot, and you know what I mean? I've been doing ever since then. So comedy is a good outlet for me. Some of the things that I face as far as like me being personally is finding somewhere here close by that does therapy for people in my situation, because a lot of places that I go here that does therapy, they don't know actually how to deal with somebody with a spinal cord injury on how to rehabilitate them. For me to get that type of workout or whatever I need is I have to go all the way to San Jose to a specialist, or San Francisco to a specialist. They don't have anything like that close around here for me to access or be able to get to. And then not only that, they don't have any outlets for somebody like me, because you know, I like to work out, I like to play basketball, I like to do a lot of that stuff, and they don't offer that here anymore in Stockton. They used to have a wheelchair basketball team, but they don't offer that. So for me to want to do some kind of recreation like that, I have to go all the way to Sacramento. And then right now, due to the pandemic, all that stuff is shut down. You know what I mean? Because people in wheelchairs, like everybody's disability is not the same in basketball. You know, a lot of them, you know, car accidents or whatever happened, everybody's disability is different. And so a lot of people, immune system is different as well. So they want to practicing together until everybody get a vaccine shot or something like that. So a lot of people don't want to get it. So, you know, that doesn't slow down for me. It's like, now it's like, there's nothing for me to do. There's no workout for this, except if I go out here and push myself up and down the street. Other than that, I can't go to the gym because none of it are handicap accessible. They don't have anything placed, you know, for me to get access to, or they don't have anyone who's a specialist into working with somebody in my situation. And so it's just a drag. A lot of stuff, you know, I get overlooked. And even in my profession, I get overlooked sometimes being in a wheelchair. It's crazy because a lot of times if the venue doesn't have a lift, they're not gonna book me to work there because they can't get me on stage. I'm a liability if they decide to have people pick me up to put me on stage. You know what I'm saying? So I get overlooked a lot for shows and stuff. So, you know what I mean? As far as like, I've seen a lot of brothers in here talking about housing. Like I never had any problem like that in Stockton with housing. When I first was disabled, I was a single dad. And when I signed up for Section 8, man, and my application went through in a couple months. That's where people been on waiting list for years and years and years. And I was blessed if that happened. You know what I mean? And, I learned about a lot of resources that I didn't even, you know, I wasn't privy to beforehand until I met a few people in my situation. So I was to connect with people that's in your situation, because sometimes you never know. There's nobody coming to me telling me, well, there's this and this and this in place for you. You go look, if you need help with this, if you need help with your groceries, if you need help with washing clothes or this, or the other, you know what I mean? They don't tell you that. They just hopefully they'll, you know, you get the information somehow. and you'll look into it, you don't need it. So it's just, you know, it's different. It's different. You know what I mean? Being being an able body to now being dependent on a wheelchair. You know what I mean? Life is different.
Well, definitely. I know you broke up a little bit there, but I kind of got some of the stuff you said. You said something about the medical facilities not being able to have the same access. Sometimes you have to go to San Francisco or different places to get the services that you need. And that's why this conversation is important. We need our city officials and elected officials in Stockton to understand this. We need our hospitals to understand there are needs. Okay, these are valid complaints. We have to be in a position to accommodate all of our 88 people, and it starts with these conversations, finding out how do we get those services down there, and how do we get the help that you need. And like you said, this pandemic has been real. Mental health is a big deal. I talked to a lot of people. You know, on top of being in a wheelchair, not being able to move, not being able to get the support, people not wanting to come close to you, and you need that support is a struggle. That's something else that community needs to hear and understand. See, these little intricate points that sometimes we as people don't always get and we don't always think about. And you talked about the financial impact, being a comedian, trying to go to different stages, going to different places, not being able to have the access to get up to be able to, make the income that you need. I mean, these are conversations that need to happen, and I've been fighting hard. I mean, this is one of the like I said, this is a passionate topic for me because I know some of the laws and the loopholes when it comes to contracting. You know, I have a mechanical background, and I know some of the loopholes. These buildings and these facilities, they get grandfathered in on the old policies, right? And they don't bring the buildings up to code because they already been standing there. But this is time to have a real conversation with our elected officials. I understand that there's the grandfather policy. You really can't force nothing that's there, but we really have to have that conversation when it comes to our people in the community that's affected with wheelchair, because you guys hear this is affecting his income. This is affecting his ability to feed his family. And again, we need these business owners. We need these elected officials to hear this. Okay, we got to find a way. And if it's moving money from different places to actually support and get these business owners and these homeowners the things that they need in a financial aspect, to bring things up to 88 code, so they do have ramps and having all of the push button openers work. One of the biggest problems I see at a lot of our city and state and federal buildings, the push buttoners don't open, because so many of the regular people walking by pushes the push button opener. Some of them are powered, some of them are battery powered. And that's why this education to the community is very, very important. People out there that don't have disabilities, when you're walking in and out of the buildings, don't press the handicap opener to open the door. Come on, push the door open and walk through, because there are batteries. Some of them are battery powered. And the more people that's pressing it, when it's time for a person in a wheelchair to come in, now that operator is not opening. Depending on what time of the week it is, depending on what type of facility it is, there might not be maintenance personnel available to make that battery change. Now this person rolls up in a wheelchair. He goes to push the wheelchair opener and he can't get in the building. Right. So it's just little things that we have to think about. And that's why this education part is very, very, very important, because sometimes in our common life, sometimes the people that don't have disability in their privileged ways just think, hey, I could do this. Just open the door. I don't want to push the door because I got coffee in my hand. But be considerate. Have a little compassion for our people that's in wheelchairs when you're walking in buildings, and not just pressing the building because you got coffee in your hand and you don't want to touch the door. Because every time you press that operator, that's a little bit of a battery charge being taken away. And we would hate to have somebody like Insane Wayne to come to the door, go to push it open, the battery is dead because everybody who didn't need it pressed the button. So that's just something to be considered about. And then the physical attribute. You talked about the recreational part, being able to have services to go out and play basketball and keep your health in there. Part of our health, it plays together. They need to exercise. They need to get out for mental health purposes as well. We have to get organizations, and we have to get some of these athletes to come and put these programs together so that they can have recreation and things to do. It's hard. It's a challenge, but we have to have those conversations. And today we're going to get through some of that. And then Wayne, if you want to add to that, go ahead. You kind of broke up a little bit, so I just want to make sure people hear and understand some of the things that you were talking about.
Okay, yeah, as well, like you said, people don't think about smoking, especially like now due to the pandemic, like all restaurants have to be outside now, and so
you breaking up.
those are all.
You breaking up.
Am I?
Yeah, it's coming in real static, and I know you got important things to say. How about this? Try to log back out and come back in, and we'll get you back up here. For some reason, the audio is not coming.
I'm gonna change my microphone real fast.
Okay.
See if that works. Hello.
Yep, we can hear you now.
I'm
That's better.
I'm gonna see if that works.
Okay, go ahead and try from there. That sounds way better. I mean, because you have some important stuff that's being
There
said.
we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
A lot better.
I really want the community to hear that. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Like you were saying right now, as far as like restaurants right now, y'all have to be outside, and a lot of restaurants are taking up the hand spaces so close to the building.
Yeah, you're still breaking. You still breaking up. I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi connection. Is your Wi-Fi? It might be your Wi-Fi connection. You're still breaking up. Okay. Yeah, for some reason it's you breaking up. But go ahead, try to go. But you're breaking up really bad.
Okay, maybe if I speak slower, will that work better? Is that better? Am I still breaking up?
Yeah, you're still breaking up. Nah, you breaking up. Yeah, try to log back out and come back in. We're gonna move on to somebody else. Try to log back in and come back, and we'll pull you up.
Okay.
All right, because we want to hear what you got to say. It's very important. So try to log back out and then come back in.
Okay.
Well, this is one of the struggles we deal with, Wi-Fi, connectivity issues. This is the infrastructure that they keep putting out about infrastructure. The first thing in America we need to do is get our fiber optics up to grade. We should be able to log on. Different countries are ahead of us. We shouldn't be having these internet problems, but we do. With that being said, while Wayne's trying to get back in, I'm going to go ahead and let my brother James introduce himself and start talking about some of the things he's been dealing with, his disability, because he's another powerful brother talking about things that's affecting him and our community and the people in the disability community. So I want to go ahead and bring him up and let him start talking to the people. Come on, James.
All right, thank you. But first, before I go, I want to say to you, man, you are a big inspiration for me. And what I mean is, I'm one of these guys. I'm not trying to be the media or anything like that. I live here in San Francisco in the inner city in supportive housing, but I am a big Facebook fan. And I also am dealing with a disability, with an injury. So I have a lot of downtime right now because I'm disabled. But you are a guy that is very inspirational, John Henry. And I just want to say it's inspiring the way that you come around San Francisco and you do the things that you do, brother. It keeps me even. Because I'm one of those guys, I ain't really got a lot of patience. I ain't really for all that other, because I come from a very serious background here in San Francisco, born and raised. But you're very inspirational because we always have to understand that there's two sides of the conversation. And what has kept me through this tough time in my life was your show with that ringing in my head. Both sides of the conversation. It ain't about you, bruh. So sometimes you gotta understand other people. So thank you, man. But the reason why I chose to came on here is because of this right here, an article in the San Francisco Examiner, and particularly to San Francisco. San Francisco, there's a big problem with regards to disability in the supportive service housing. Now, it's very difficult for me to try to explain everything, but so I'll just stick to the article in the San Francisco Examiner that was written by Laura Waxman. This applies to me, but also thousands of other people living right here in dilapidated San Francisco. And what I mean is San Francisco has developed in a way that this district that I'm living in was one of the last developed districts in San Francisco, back when San Francisco had 100,000 African-American descendants from slavery in 1970. But this particular building that I'm living in, and it is just so bad with regards to disability violations. I tried to communicate with everybody before this. So I have tons right here with me today. I brought tons of information, data, grievances, different things like that to talk about if people want to try to get to the problem of what I have been doing, because a lot of people know me as Mr. Despicable. And I've been going at this situation on Facebook a certain kind of way because I felt disrespected by San Francisco. I was born and raised in the city, lived here all my life, seen all kinds of atrocities goes on, and I filed grievances at very serious points in the San Francisco system. Never got any answers. The article was written. So, I mean, there's a lot of different areas I could talk about today, what I brought information on. I would just like to focus on, if anybody wants to bring it up, a lady called Susan Meisner. This system where I'm living at started under Gavin Newsom. Susan Meisner asked Gavin Newsom, when she was the mayor's office on disability director, for projections on what it would take for this system in San Francisco to deal with the homeless as far as building units and projections. She never got it. They went ahead with this system, and we have a lot of problems in it. I was living in a Department of Public Health clinic 4 years ago. In 2018, I got referred to a unit, and I want to show you guys some of what we're talking about here in San Francisco. This is a photo of the clinic of what I was living in. This was a bathroom, and now you had 70 guys living in this building where they forced us to live. It was one building contracted by five other agencies. You had Department of Public Health, you had Community Awareness Treatment Services, who I brought information today. I put grievances in, tons of grievances with them, never got answers as far as disability, accommodations, and I mean, I never got any answers. All I got was retaliated on and thrown in the street. I was sent to this particular building from a system called Coordinated Entry. Now, in my article in the San Francisco Examiner, Department of Homelessness runs this. It's brand new, this whole system. Department of Homelessness is new. Supportive housing is new with regards to the way it is done. They contracted me and all the disability services out to a system called Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, and they don't answer anything, and they never, ever projected disabilities into the system. So now you have all of these guys. Now, if you live in San Francisco, or if you've been dealing with homelessness and watching it from a perspective of American and seeing how it is in San Francisco, we're probably one of the worst. But it is so bad. But all of these guys come into the system, disabled guys, all of this. But it's so bad with regards to violation, because they have taken all the dilapidated buildings and forced everybody through there. Now, I am disabled on SSI, and my income is only $1,000 a month. If I was to enter the mayor's office on housing's portal, it starts at probably $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 a month, and then you can go in different buildings and apply. But for me and for my income, for people that are disabled in a wheelchair, there's nothing inside of that portal. So any other questions or anything like that any panelists want to ask? I'm right here. I don't want to take the time up, but I just wanted to focus on my article in Examiner. So throughout the course of this conversation we have today, I have tons of other documents that may apply. And I'm talking about, I have information on the access point, who runs it, the organizations, it's Episcopal Community Services Coordinated Entry System that was brought in, and it was spoke on in my article as being also brought in by Houston, Texas. But of course, we know Houston, Texas is 14 times bigger than San Francisco. So it's probably going to work there. But it did not work here because they have nowhere to build. And here I sit in a lot of violations of the law.
So what I want to do is, and I understand there's different agencies, and I have to concur sometimes reaching with the different city departments, getting some of the department heads to reach out is a task. You try to use the city's social media sites to reach out to them, and there's not a response. And I think that's something, first off, that just needs to be addressed. And I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes trying to get that fixed, but there is a problem with navigating the city website and some of these social media handles that they have. And I hope they're listening. We will be reaching out because this is a concern for me now. Like I said, I'm very passionate about people in the community with disabilities, and I think leadership, there's a role. There's a communication that has to happen, and it can't be just because people are having grievances that they're being mistreated or misplaced because of calling out some of the flaws in the system. The ideal is coming together and fixing the problem, fixing the city. But what I want to do is kind of give the people in the community an ideal when you're talking about these violations, because maybe they don't understand the violations. But could you paint a picture of the living situations so that people understand? And what I'm trying to get at is the ramps working? Do the elevators work? Is the ventilation and heating systems working? Is the hot water working? Things of that nature that can impact you as a person with a disability. That's what I'm trying to get to paint that picture to the community.
You see this right here? Okay, now this is what happens in San Francisco when you contract out to old dilapidated buildings. So this is 1171 Mission Street. It's the building is owned by St. Anthony's. Okay, it's right there between 8th and 7th. It's owned by St. Anthony's. It was contracted out to the Department of Public Health, who contracted it out to the Medical Respiratory Center, who also contracted with Community Awareness Treatment Services, and I have information on them. They're not even around anymore because of the complaints in my article in Examiner. They're changed their name to Community Forward because they lost all of their organizations because of complaints like mine. Now, the problem with this is probably a space right here legally that it's supposed to be maybe 10 guys at the most. But right here on this particular day, you could have anywhere up to 50 guys with wheelchairs, walkers, and everything crammed into this space. And that's one of the problems with these dilapidated buildings. Now they're owned by 501c3 nonprofits. So it's just like in this building, you have 4 organizations inside of one. So when I put in my grievances and I want to show you something. You see these? These are grievances that each one was different. Like this one, it says right there, biohazard waste. I turned this grievance in through patient concern at San Francisco Patient Care Feedback, San Francisco, Department of Public Health website. Never got an answer. Now, I want to show you something. You see this right here? Now, I brought tons of grievances today. This is who I CC'd in all of my emails. These are all San Francisco organizations. 360 Health Right, DPH, all of these DPH. Look at it, Honey Mahogany, Haney, Matt Haney's office, Leslie Burwell, which is Department of Homelessness. I tagged all of them and never got a response. And some of these violations, it's bad. Like with regards to the pictures I just showed, it was 70 guys living in a space probably designed for 20 people. And I also brought here today the mission statement. Now, in 2018, they were contracted by the city and county of San Francisco to upgrade from 45 beds to 70 beds. And shortly after, I was placed there to live and try to get my surgeries while I waited for 2 years for housing. But some of the problems that they have is these old dilapidated buildings, these 501c3s receive money. I don't know how they receive, but I think they receive money for in some kind of way. It has to do with per person. But in that particular instance, in that setting from the photo that I showed, I put in grievances with the mayor's office on disability. I put them in with Matt Haney's office, everything while I was living there, as it states right there in the San Francisco Examiner article. But some of the problem with that is that these buildings are in violations right off the top. The way that they had us crammed into the area, it was nothing. It was all a violation of the fire codes. I wrote grievances to the mayor's office on disability. I wrote grievances to the Department of Public Health. I wrote grievances to Community Awareness Treatment Services. Never got a reply with regards to what is the common space that a person is supposed to live in. You got to understand that in that clinic, in this particular photo right here that I showed you, that I just showed you guys, there we're probably getting close to, I would say, $10 or $12 or $13,000 a month per person in that setting. And so when I wrote the grievances, they didn't do nothing but retaliate on me and kick me out and threw me out on the street. So the problem with all of these buildings and supportive service housings is that they're in such a rush to contract and get these guys off the street that there's no system as far as the way that they process who's disabled, who's really disabled, the difference between a person that can walk and a person in a wheelchair, a quadriplegic, a paraplegic, a person that's blind, a person that can't hear. And what I mean is they're taking money for disabilities, and a lot of these buildings are designed for just people with disabilities like mental disabilities or disabilities where they something's wrong with their hearing or something is wrong with seeing, but that's still disabilities. But the way that they structurally designed this building, like my place, I've come to find out that the space allotted a person in a bathroom legally, federally, for what they're receiving money for is supposed to be 60 inches of space and a clear diameter around the bathroom. None of these buildings are built that way. This particular building where I've been in, everybody that knows me knows on Facebook, I got it all right there. I got all the pictures, I got all the posts, I got all the information, and I'll be putting it back on. So some of the problems with that is it affects your daily life. Like I just had multiple surgeries. Last week, I got 100 stitches in my leg. I come back to my unit here. I got a doctor's appointment 4 days later to take the stitches out. Very important. Guess what happens? The elevator goes out. I missed my appointment with UCSF because I couldn't get out the building. This building is not designed for if there's an emergency, guess what? And the elevator goes out, everybody that's in this building in a wheelchair, and there's probably 7 or 8 people on the floor, on each floor, and there's 5 floors. It's stuck. There's no ramps. There's no backup. There's nothing. It's just the elevator's out. And if you can't walk downstairs, you're done. And so I missed my appointment that day, brother. And these are some of the structural designs and problems with San Francisco with the way they did it. Now, I did a post with regards to the sex offenders in San Francisco, not to jump ship, but it applies. And just give me 1 second. All the sex offenders are placed relatively in District 6. Everything is placed that way in San Francisco. They have 6 sex offenders in District 1. They have 2,000 sex offenders in a 10-block radius in this area between District 6, 9, and 10. You guys know the region. You know the area. But everything is done like this. So contracting with these dilapidated buildings, they did not build anything new for supportive service housing, where most of the clients come from the street and the homeless and our elder with substance abuse problems. So you know there's going to be physical disabilities. But it's very expensive to determine who's disabled, who's not disabled, and who's faking. They just said, forget it. We ain't even going to do disabilities. And they contracted in. It's all in my article.
Wow. A lot of information, very deep, touching. My emotions is very high, but I'm gonna stay calm right now because I can be a little radical. But it sounds like, if I hear you right, there's a couple things that need to be identified when we're contracting to nonprofits or potential owners of organizations that's going to be housing people with disabilities and some of our elders. It sounds like we're missing the process of the foundation, right? So disability is disability, but when there's a physical disability, when it comes to location and housing, there needs to be a better conversation, understanding before we move people in wheelchairs into locations that are accessible by wheelchairs, ramps, and different things of that nature. So that's problem number one, and that's a planning thing. We have to have some strategic planning, and it sounds like this is a conversation I'm going to further to some people that I know, and I've reached out to Matt and Brother Shaman, and we're going to have some conversations about that, because again, we can't just be moving people just to move people. We have to be strategic, and we have to make sure that we are doing the right things when it comes to moving people that have physical disability versus people who are dealing with other disabilities. And I agree, maybe somebody who has a hearing disability or some other disability maybe could go to these sites, but people in wheelchair especially, we need to pay attention how we housing them, how we moving them, and making sure that the location that they're going to be housed has all the ADA approved codes and accessibilities. I have some people at city permits and planning at the inspection office. I definitely will be reaching out to them because if these locations are housing people in wheelchairs and we don't have the proper ADA approved lifts, accessible elevators, ramps, and things of that nature. That's a conversation that we need to have as a community. And this is what I'm talking about, solidarity. Okay, we can't just rally up for every other event that happens in San Francisco and across this country and not be willing to come together for people with disabilities, because these struggles that they deal with is challenging. And we need to have more compassion and humility when dealing with these situations and responding in a way that we're acting swiftly and in a way with empathy to make sure that people like James and other brothers on this call are not being impacted in the way they're being impacted. And then, the living situation about how many people and the spacing and what's needed and security and things of that nature. We definitely need to further these conversations. I will be reaching out and on the behalf of our disability community to some of the elected officials that we know, because there is some problems with communication and being accessible and getting access to some of these department heads and departments. And I think it's time for a culture change in San Francisco. And I understand that sometimes our workers that work for the federal government, for the state, and sometimes city and county becomes complacent. Okay. And when they become institutionalized and they hear so many complaints and they don't react and respond in the way that they need to. So that's a conversation as well we need to happen, because again, for all those people that's watching, that's out there, if you're one of those people that work in these departments, when these people that are dealing with disabilities are coming with complaints, we need to respond in a professional manner, in a manner of compassion and humility, and swiftly. And if it comes back down to contracting, then we need to review the contracts, because a lot of times contracting is the issue. This is not the first email or complaint I've received from people in the community. And that's why we moved this conversation up. I was trying to give a little bit more time, but I did my due diligence reaching out to some of these departments and haven't got feedback and callbacks. And we're going to keep pushing this, but I wanted to bring this up because I was getting too many emails and it's starting to get frustrating. And we can't have this. And I need community out there to understand. These are our brothers and sisters in the community. and they deal with different struggles, no matter how they got to their disability or what's happening, we got to stand in solidarity with them and make sure that they get the needs. Again, like I said, I know the frustration when I go to a building and the elevator is not working and I got to walk up 10 flights of stairs. Now, could you just imagine James or Jamil, somebody else that got somewhere to gotta go, can't get up the elevator or can't get down the elevator because it's out of service, and these complaints that I'm getting at some of these city buildings and some of these city locations, it is very, very, very hard. I can't even get the word. I'm so frustrated when I hear elevators and lift gates are down for 6-8 weeks. It is time to have a management system. These people that call themselves leaders, we got to find out what's going on. And if it's in the contractor, these contractors need to understand these locations, these ramps and these elevators and these accessibility issues for access for our people in wheelchairs is needed. And if those contracts need to be re-reviewed and rethought about, there's a level of humility that we have to have. And I'm sorry to say this. If we have contracts with contractors, elevator contractors, and it's taking them 6 to 8 weeks to fix ramps, elevators, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. And anybody think that's okay? If anybody think that's okay, we have a problem. You can reach out to me and I'll tell you why. So that's something that we're going to definitely talk about. Very frustrating, very, very it's a touching conversation, so I'm gonna try to move on because I know Jamil got to go. James, hang in there because we'll loop back around there. But I'll be reaching out to some of our elected officials because I seen several emails, and I've seen not just you all that's on this panel, other people showing me from the BART as well. Okay, the BART station. A lot of our people in wheelchairs are using our public transportation, and some of the lifts and elevators are not working in those locations as well. And it's time to have a real conversation with the leadership. Because again, these elevator companies, I know about these companies, okay? I'm in construction. These people are getting paid a lot of money, okay? Especially the elevator and ramp people, okay? They make a pretty good penny. I know the workers who do it. I mean, these guys are making $100 an hour. And I know these organizations and some of these corporations are making big time contracts with our city, local, and federal entities. And again, it is unacceptable to have ramps and escalators and elevators and lift ramps down for 6 to 8 weeks. It is unacceptable, and it's time for us to be accountable, because what we hear at both sides of conversations, we're going to hold people accountable. You're not just going to come here and say everything is right. We're going to hear both sides of it, and we're going to hold these elected officials and these entities, these department heads accountable. But there is some culture change that needs to happen. I'm aware of some of the things that's going on. I've seen some of the emails and some of the rhetoric and information that's coming back to these people. Is unacceptable from these departments. We need to have a little bit more humility and compassion for people with disabilities. So I'm glad you brought that up, and we're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to move on and jump into Brother Jamil here because I know he has a phenomenal story, and I know some of the struggles. I've watched this brother. I've met up with him, and I know what it takes to get out of his van, to do the things that he needs to do to get around. And I'm going to tell all the people out there, us privileged people, because there's a lot of privileged people out here, when you're parking on side of a handicapped stall that says van access, please take the extra second to move over and give these people an opportunity to get out of their wheelchair. I was with Jamil just last week, as a matter of fact, and I see how much room and space he needs. And sometimes the space that's marked out, he needs a little bit more to get in and out of his van. So for the lazy folks out there, I'm just gonna call it what it is. Some of our lazy people. Okay, when you're parking near handicap accessible parking and you don't want to just walk an extra little mile, make sure you're giving them the proper space. It is a struggle sometimes for them to get in and out of their vehicles, so be mindful of it. And that's why this conversation is very important, to help educate the community. Okay, we got to get out of this. Hey, there's a spot. This is close to the door. I need to get there. You need to think about the people in these wheelchairs and that don't have the accessibility that they need. It is a struggle. It is a job for them. And why do we have to make it even more harder for them to get out? It's already a challenge dealing with the disability. And as community, we have to do a better job to make sure we support them and recognize and lift our level of consciousness to understand when you're parking and when you're doing certain things, be mindful that the person that's pulling that spot needs that access, and it's very important. So with that being said, go ahead, Brother Jamil. I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about some of the struggles and things that you've seen, and what kind of support, what does it look like, and what do we need to fix?
How you doing, brother? Hey, John, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Okay, good. Hey, listen, John, perfect segue into what I was going to talk about when you said all being considerate and what is it going to take to get feedback. So when you didn't get a response, you was getting a lot of emails, you didn't get response, you was putting out there, you was trying to talk to people and whatnot and the other. And if I can see everybody when I talk, John, that'll be helpful for me. Perfecto. So John, we got to ask ourselves, right? Even with James, he was saying no response. Why is that? We got to think about
so what I would say, it's a failure of department leadership. Okay, that's what it is. We can't BS today. We got to call it what it is. There's some departments in City Hall that has failure in leadership. When it comes to the ADA community, if people are responding and we're not getting a response back in a timely manner from these departments, is the community responsibility to go above their heads and ask for what we need and hold them accountable. So that's what it is. I've reached out to several city departments and I've gotten the same thing. It is unprofessional. It is not community support and it's not transparent. So we're going to call it out what it is. And it needs to be fixed. And it needs to be addressed immediately.
So I'm going to take it a step further. Not just that, but I'm going to take it a step further. Most of the work that I do when I do these videos, I talk about the perception, the stereotype, and ableism, like why it exists. So even if it's officials, what's behind that is the lack of acceptance. Why do you think in 2022, after brother Brad Lomax and Chuck Jackson out of Black Panthers, who started the groundwork in San Francisco and Oakland to get the 504 sit-ins that eventually led to the passage of the 89 ADA or 1990 ADA? Why do you think 30 years later that there's still pushback? And I am saying to you that it's a matter of acceptance or a lack of that. Even today, we're sitting here fighting. Imagine that. Fighting over something that we seem to see it's so simplistic. But so is being Black and dealing with police brutality and racism. They were doing it 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. We're still doing it now. So there's a correlation, John, between racism against Black people and people with disabilities. There's a direct correlation. Either with police, you are dangerous as a Black person. In mainstream society, as a Black person with a disability, you're not valuable. You're incapable. You're not in the front of anything. So this goes back. This treatment and this stereotype and this kind of behavior that we deal with, that James deals with, that you're talking about, you've experienced, where you get pushback, is rooted from not accepting disabled people. And that is historic. And mind you, where that started was way back, slavery times. Remember, they would cut an ankle or cut a hand. That's to immobilize you, right? But then in mainstream society, what they would do was institutionalize you. So you're either demonized or institutionalized. Either way, either one, in 2022, the result is still You're not being accepted as our equal in mainstream society. So, one moment. I'm about to make some people feel uncomfortable now. In order for this to still go on, it has to be a collective effort from society as a whole. That's just like with police brutality or racism, or the school to prison pipeline. It cannot work if everybody's not on board. Now, I will say that some, and I talk about this when I do my videos, some people deal with internal bias that they may not be aware of. Get down. Jama, Indio. Right? Internal bias that they may not be aware of. So my videos raise that awareness. You notice I always target able-bodied people, or I always talk to people who I say, you may have a family member. You may overlook them. You may not deal with them, the way you deal with your own peers. Where does that come from? I challenge people to think about that and look at that and question that. Because and the point is, because I know we may be all we got, but the strength is in the numbers. Stop. Yeah. Sorry about that. Our strength is in our numbers, and bias and discrimination starts internal. We have to fix this internally. We have to fix this within our own family. And when I say family, I mean family the way the Asians use family and the way the Jews use family, which is another word for community. We have to deal with that. How can I conquer what's going on in society outside when I can't even conquer what's going on internally in my own community? So it's not just the officials. Yeah, they're there and they have the power, but it's the mentality and the perception that's so deep rooted and seated in their mindset that they really don't see that they are a part of crippling, for lack of a better term, very able-bodied people that just have some special circumstance in one way or another. Insane, the comedian, should not be missing money because he can get into a venue. The cheapest ramp on Amazon is $75. So again, it's not the ramp, it's the mentality of the people, which is they're not accepting us as our equal, or we wouldn't have these issues. Again, why? Ask yourself, when you get on BART in the city, when you get off BART, there's this long, dark corridor. You guys go up the stairs and you go up the escalator, but to your left, right by the train tracks, when I'm rolling over there before I started driving, I knew people was wondering where the hell he's going. There's nothing over there. It is. It's a back route, about 25 yards. And the lane between the ramp and the wall is the length of maybe 2 wheelchairs side by side. And it's a long, dark, cold corridor. Can you imagine that being that way since the ADA got in? Get in. Why is that still there? Because it's accepted by society. Nobody's complaining. No able-bodied people are complaining about that. The society doesn't see anything wrong with it. They're not even looking at it. Right? They're not even looking at it. What if someone's wheelchair power was to die? Who knows you're back there? You know how notorious bark is? You don't roll on bark by yourself in the dark walkway talking about you're going to the elevator by yourself on 5th and Market on a Friday night or Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. But I'm saying that most of my work, I try to focus on changing the mindset that people have, whether it's conscious or not. If it's subconscious, I then make you aware. Now, what you do from that point, now I'm holding you accountable. It's not that you didn't know. And I'm saying, with all of the brothers and sisters that put in all the work that afforded me the parking spot when I pull up, that afforded me the liberties that I have, like Kilu and Yasha, our sister out of San Francisco that worked for Bayview, and K-Fu. Everybody know her. She's been a soldier for years. I'm saying, even with all of that work, the sit-ins, the protests, all of that, it's a direct correlation to racism with Black people. All of the marching, all of the killing, all of the ignoring, all of the pacifying, it's a direct correlation to people with disabilities. And I try to make people aware that once you know, now I'm holding you accountable. And I always, and I'll end with this, I always say to people at the end of my videos, never mind me, but we have somebody in the family. Because I grew up with an uncle that lived at the end of the hall, and I didn't understand why he was the only one didn't come out to eat at the table. I didn't understand it then. I didn't understand it until I got disabled. I'm like, oh, this is some mental health stuff going on. And the family is acting like ain't nothing wrong. I said, oh, okay. They ain't finna have me in the back of the room. I'm out here. But my family didn't try. But we know that this happens in our community. We know it happens. So when we talk about Black people, and like James does, about the reparations, about the coming together, about the building a community, about the building businesses, and focusing on ourselves internally, we have to remember, we don't just mean the Black people that you like, or the Black people that are eye to eye with you. I got a niece that's with cerebral palsy. I got friends that are blind. I know all kinds of people. And when we talk about programming and the system or Department of Public Health or whoever these officials are, when they start talking about doing something for a community, I'm not in mind. I'm not in mind. But even when I make myself aware and I make others aware, and the brothers on here and the sisters is out there that's listening, when I make them aware, it's pushback. So now it's not about not knowing. It's about not accepting, right? It's about not accepting, and you have to have an enormous amount of resilience to deal with that. I mean, a ramp costs $75. Why is a man in a wheelchair that's a comedian can't get in a venue? Because he's not being accepted. It's not on him to buy it. Yeah, he can, but we're talking about the ownership of society and how we're perceived and handled. The dismissiveness. The patronizing you. When you're present, they're very understanding and nice, and I get it. The minute you walk away, it's silence of the lambs. And then they're looking at you as someone complaining or something, but the frustration level, I understand it. And I haven't been in the game long. I don't know if I could have done what they've done that come before me. It took a help. I'm frustrated now. And all these parking spots and elevators and blue markers are there. And I'm still frustrated. Imagine when they wasn't there. So when I opened up talking about, John, why is that? I was getting to this, that society has not, and they are unwilling to admit, we don't see you as our equal. They don't have to say it. They show us and how they deal with us, like we're little annoying children, you know? And that's just the raw reality. And I'm talking about people I know. I'm not being biased. I'm being honest. So I bring it to their attention. Hey, don't act like white supremacists towards me. Don't pacify me. You're doing that thing again. Uncle, stop that. You're doing that thing again. I see you. Don't do that behind my back when I'm not looking. Don't do that. I see you. Hey, don't be doing that because you think I can't reach it. I see you. These little things that they do and the way they treat you stems from not accepting you. And my videos and my work is to dispel that attitude so that we are not only given access, but inclusion, not just getting in the door and not even just sitting at a table, but having a voice. It's the levels to this. And we're down here fighting on the ground level. We can't even get basic human rights. Basic. I am blessed that I have a place. You know, I'm blessed that I have some things afforded to me. But as the saying goes, so much that you have is so much that's required. So it's not enough for me to be comfortable. It's not enough just for me to be eating. It's not enough for me to be fat. Jesus fed the multitudes. And I've had people, in closing, John, I won't get to police and black bodies because I was going to talk about that. I'll pass that up. But in closing, because I want my brother Barry to get some time, I'll say, I've had people tell me, you have transportation. Why are you participating in this? What's your complaint? You have housing. What's your complaint? I've had people tell me, sign up for something else. Just don't put disability on it. Right? It's not enough for me just to be okay. But people have attempted to once again shift the responsibility or the accountability away from them by pacifying me so they won't have to deal with the family. So we're all guilty in some way, shape, form, or fashion of this. And hopefully after today, we can step back and be like, I'm gonna have to go and let, I'm gonna have to do my part. Wow. All right. Now, hopefully we can all win. Peace and blessings, everybody.
Let me tell you, that's very powerful. Until I dealt with my own disability, I didn't understand the struggles until I started understanding. And that's why this conversation is so passionate for me. And I'm in solidarity with you. And this is what I'm talking about. Community. We have to stand together on all issues. We can't pick and choose when we want to be in solidarity. And this is why the solidarity thing, it drives me a little bit both ways. Because I'm about everybody. But what I'm starting to find out, solidarity only looks like when it's cool to fit in. And I keep educating people and let them know solidarity is 7 days a week, 365 days a year, all issues, all communities. We cannot turn our back on other communities because it doesn't apply to us. See, we have to rally thousands and thousands for the disability community as well. We can't just pick and choose, when we're going to be in solidarity. So that's one of my issues with the solidarity thing, because I'm down for everybody. But again, we can't mobilize and rally 1,000, 2,000 people for one affected community, and we forget about our disabled community, or we forget about other parts of our community. We all got struggles and we all have issues, and it takes a community. And when our people from the disability community is calling out, this is a call for action. I'm not going to just blow the whistle because one community is getting hurt or another community is getting hurt. I'm blowing the whistle for everybody. This is a call to action for everybody in every community, in every department. We got to stick together and we got to figure this out. And again, it starts with education. We have to do a better job when we onboard and offboarding people in these positions to make sure that they have an understanding, especially when we're dealing with the disability community, how it's important, why it's important, why we must respond, why we need to do the things that needs to be done in an effective manner, why we need to take the extra step to review contracts to make sure that the contracts that are dealing with things that affect our people with disability is being handled in an effective manner. When it comes to parking and accessibility to our government business buildings and to the places that our people have to go for services, making sure that they have the access. Okay, I've had to go in gas stations and stand up for people in vans and wheelchairs because they haven't been educated at gas stations that when a person with a disabled placard on their windshield or on their license plate pulls up, the person behind the counter is supposed to shut down what he's doing and come out and pump the gas for him. I've had to educate people about that. But that comes with a little bit more of understanding. And we got to get our employers out there. We got to get people in the community who run organizations to have a little bit more sensitivity when it comes to these topics and making sure that the people, the staff that's handling these complaints has a level of compassion and understanding why it's important to move in a way that's swift to give you guys the results that you need when you're out in the community. So again, that's why this conversation is here and it's not going away. And again, I'm going to give our elected officials and the people of these departments that we're talking about an opportunity to reach out, to come and talk about some of the resources and give you guys some of that, because it's time for that. See, when healing comes with giving the resources and what we're trying to do, it's okay. There's a failure. See, great leadership understand that when failure happens, you have to take the courageous acts to make change. That's what we're talking about.
Let me just make one more point on what you said. If it's okay, John.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's not just sympathy. The same reason it's not better police training. It's not just that, it's acceptance. It's your willingness to accept it and get out of your cognitive dissonance that allows you to act like it's not happening. So we don't need more police training. We need more people that deal with human beings in the way that our human rights are supposed to be handled. And that's not sympathy. That's a human nature, human right thing. You know right from wrong. You know what you're doing. It's lack of acceptance and unwillingness. They understand. When they pull up in a blue mark, they're not misunderstanding where they're parking. It's a picture of a wheelchair that says $250 if, and they jump they happy ass right out of there and say, I'm gonna be right out. It's acceptance. And I don't know what it's gonna take, but hopefully enough of this conversation will make that happen. Appreciate y'all.
Man, this is what it's about. This conversation is again, that's why here at both sides of the conversation, we believe through communication, a level of healing begins, a level of consciousness begins. Because sometimes people are just not aware. We are so privileged. And I always tell people, check your privilege at the door. Check your entitlement at the door. Have a little humility and compassion for other people. And that's what we got to do as a community. We got to start thinking about everybody except ourselves. And it starts with conversations like this. And we're going to further these conversations because we're going to get the impact. And when we talk about accountability, that's coming together, sending emails and letters. And again, using some of the people that we know behind the scenes that we can really get real conversation, effective change. It can happen because, again, Jamil, what you said, it is a human rights concern. Okay, anytime that our people and any person, any human being is being violated of their natural civil rights, it's a human rights issue, and we have to address it. And if we have to stop at the top, we will start at the top. But these department heads, we're going to hold them accountable. There's a culture change that need to happen, not only in San Francisco, around this country, when we're dealing with people in the disability community and employers and large organizations as well. It's a human resource issue, educating about the needs and what needs to be done when we're dealing with people with disabilities, and making sure that it's fair and equitable and inclusion for all, and making that process possible. So with that being said, Danielle has a question, and Barry, you can start with answering the question and jump into yours, but go ahead, Danielle, and ask your question.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you, Jamel. So Jamel, you mentioned that the people that have disabilities face some of the same disparities and inequalities as like African Americans, or at least you're making that comparison. What happens when you mix class and race together with people that have disabilities? Do white people with disabilities and wealthy people with disabilities have the same challenges as the POCs with the disabilities?
Absolutely not. My experience as a Black man is very different than the experience of a white man when we roll into Macy's. The way they handle me is very different. The correlation is so similar to being Black that I picked up on it so quick because I wasn't always paralyzed. So I knew the interaction between the authorities and mainstream society in retail when I was walking in. And then when I got in the chair, it was deja vu. And I saw even in my purchasing, when I started to build credit, when I went to buy my van, they would offer me a 2014 Toyota, even though I was offering more money than what I saw my counterparts who were white driving. How do I know that? Because I talked to the counterparts that were white driving. And I talked to them a lot because I only seen them. So I knew there was privilege right there. Because you don't see a lot of people in Fillmore, Hunters Point, Potrero Hill. I'm all over the city. I don't see too many Black males driving the kind of vehicle that I see when I go to North Beach and when I go out to the avenues and I see those vans coming out. Those are 2020 Chryslers. Those are 2021 Siennas. I know the vehicles and I know what they cost. So I see the difference in there. So it's very different to answer your question in that regard. It's also it's very risky to collaborate with non-Blacks when it comes to the disability community that are not Black, because of the history we have with collaborating with others. And as soon as the work is done, we're stepped over. And they begin to build off of what we fought for together. So I'm just very conscientious of that. So I'm not against it. I said I'm conscious of it. So I don't get it confused. Go ahead.
Well, for example, if there's an issue with the broken elevator and you raise your voice and you say, hey, this is what we need, do you feel like if a white person with disabilities said it, it's going to be fixed a lot faster? So, what are some of the issues that you feel are, because there's definitely issues that all people with disabilities face, but the response to you, do you feel like that's different?
It's different if a white person reports it. There is zip code and status. It's like the streets. When I drive out to Clement, It's very different when I drive on Clementina. Clementina is in the south of Market. Clement is in the avenues. I worry about my tires when I'm around here. It's the same thing. It's not that we don't call. It's they don't service us with the kind of quality and sincerity as they do others.
Wow. Go ahead, James. Jump in there till Barry come back. Go ahead and jump in there. You got to unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say, like, I've known Jamal a long time, and I knew him before he was disabled. So he's been disabled a long time. He's very experienced. Me, I just became disabled a few years ago, and I'm working to get out of my wheelchair. But what I've seen, I started dealing with that article in the San Francisco Examiner in my situation based on housing. But to answer your question that you just asked him, from what I've seen in this short time, it's very, very bad, particularly in San Francisco, because everything is based. See, San Francisco is a lot of trickery versus other cities. You can't compare. Other cities, they still have public housing. They still have the projects. They still have all. We lost all of that. They took all of that. That's where we lost from 1970 to now, that 70,000 residents. Because when they took those housing projects, a lot of our people came from the South and was placed in those housing projects. And families became families, became families, became families. And that's how our community deteriorated in San Francisco, because of the systemic racism. So the few years that I've seen in this system, this coordinated entry, it's all about subsidies. Now, for us to have 33,000 residents, we know we're doing not good at all in San Francisco, African-American descendants from slavery from the inner city. It's all about subsidies. So the subsidies process the incomes. They have subsidies, for people that make $8,000 a month in San Francisco. You know that, right? You know, a lot of these buildings are being built for people that make $10,000 a month. So with regards to ADA amenities, of course, they're not African-American descendants from slavery, because they are gentrifiers. There are people that are coming to San Francisco to live with big income, that are working in tech and need a place to live. So they're building these new buildings. But with regards to, if you go in that building on some kind of lottery system or some kind of subsidy, it's the same thing as the projects. It's the same thing as somebody living somewhere that they can't afford to live. So when you have a system of people living in places that they can't afford to live, and they all look like a certain color, and with it regards to disabilities, you get the 60 inches of space in the diameter around your wheelchair, you get the roll-in shower, you get all that, like my unit here. Why did they move me? I can't sit in the bathtub. I wasn't walking. So how can you have recently contracted a building 2 years ago, 100 units, and all of them still got the bathtubs in there from when they were when they were low budget hotels from 30 years ago? It still's got the same bathtub in a space that is so small. If you'd have took the bathtub out, they would have made it a lot safer, but it's not in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act. But in San Francisco, all the public housing was contracted out to 501c3s. They run it now. So the bigger incomes on subsidies in these buildings, they are living side by side with people that can afford to pay there on their own, free market. So they are getting great amenities as far as disability. They don't look like us. And from what I've seen in this process, a lot of these guys in this building, I'm getting guys that have moved into this building and only came from somewhere. They weren't even living in San Francisco 9 months ago. They have a unit here. I have African-American descendants of slavery that I have interviewed all over the shelter system that have been waiting 2 and 3 years. How did this guy get here? Because he has a mental problem? That got him cut in line and a place to live versus somebody that's disabled?
And James, just to follow up, Danielle, what James is, what we're both talking about goes back to, it's discrimination and the stereotyping magnified when you're Black. Our experience, you guys are familiar with redlining already. You're familiar with being profiled already, right? We're already, now throw a disability in there. So that's what we as Black people deal with. It's not just the disability. but you're also fighting the system that's geared already to, to negotiate you in a certain way already. Now throw a disability in. Do you realize that most people think I was shot? I didn't know that. I started telling my story because I didn't realize, I'm just out here doing my thing. I'm just living life. I didn't know. I had been paralyzed probably 5 years before I even started talking about it, because I was ignorant to the fact that I was wondering, why people act funny when I come in. I wasn't tripping. I'm just doing my thing. And it wasn't until I started becoming aware and saw people say, so what happened to you? Most non-Black people thought, because I live in the Soma. Remember, when I was injured, the Soma was the tech era. That's when the .com boom hit. The Intercontinental wasn't there. The Moscone North and South, all that was really popping. So the tech world was moving in. And most assumed I was in some type of street activity or something like. They never asked me, was I injured playing sports? They never asked me, well, were you the only one hurt in your situation? I was like, my situation. Was I the only one hurt? Okay. So what I started picking up on is that what James is saying, in the housing, the pecking order, your disability is an additional strike when you're Black. It's an additional strike. So it's layers to this. And we live with this. I wear, how we all Black on the screen. And don't get it twisted. I'm not acting like I'm not focusing on Black people. I am because I'm dealing with the reality in front of me. So it's not. I'm not against any other group, but there's not another group in front of me. So I have to deal with that. So as a Black person, we wear already our skin. We're so that society makes you aware of your Blackness when you go outside. You've been Black all your life. You don't trip on it. Society reminds you of that. And when you're in a wheelchair, they remind you that you're not our equal. I don't care what you look like, how you dress, what you drive, what you do. At the end of the day, you're not our equal. Well, Jamel, how can you prove that? Take a look outside. Why is everything for a wheelchair access around the back? Why is when you go to a movie, the seats is a whole empty row? I don't have a date or something? Where's she supposed to sit? On my lap. I mean, she can, but not in the movie. But I'm just saying, right? Why is that though? So
it goes back to planning. It's an understanding, and this is why this education part is so important to our architects, to our engineers, to our developers. These are the conversations they need to hear when they drawing up the blueprints to have an understanding. And it sounds like from you all speaking today, the level of planning and understanding is not there. So it starts back at the city planning, at the developer layer, all the way to the architects and the build. Okay,
no,
so that's where it starts.
The acceptance, it's not there. Because SDA, Senior Disability Action, Independent Living Resource Center, K2L, Keys Independent Living, Jamel, James, they know. It's the acceptance. And we're not going to talk about money. Don't tell me it's money, right? Because there's so much 501c3 money out there, it's a shame. If you know how to navigate the situation, you can get the money. There's money. It's about, they'd rather pacify you. They'd rather just pay me. They rather just pay James. They rather just pay, people individually rather than invest in the community. And because, again, they're not our equal.
Right.
Because they wouldn't do bikes this way. People that ride bikes, I dare you not have a bike lane. All hell will break loose. Let the LGBTQ find out it ain't a rainbow on Market Street when they put something up. It'd be mayhem and blood. Quit playing. They'll give them that word. So it's not that they don't know. It's just, man, they won't accept it. We force feeding them this for years. Brothers been on the front line, 504 units, ADA. This is not new. It's a lack of acceptance, not a lack of understanding.
Well, this is a continued conversation when we're talking about equity, acceptance, inclusion, equality. It's all in there. But we got Brother Barry back. He's been waiting patiently. We're going to go ahead and bring Brother Barry in here and let him start swinging, talking about some of the things he does.
I'm enjoying the breakdown,
Yeah.
I think my brother was hitting jewels. And, when we just talk about our disabled community, especially our African-American disabled community, you have to really think about it. If we are physically, mentally disabled as a people on a whole, what about the brothers and sisters who are just disabled physically? We talk about in a whole, we're already disabled. What about the stretches of, things that our brothers and sisters who mentally and even in the physical are just as strong as those who are able to perform with all their limbs. But we have to really look at how much of discrimination is there for them, because they have not only the simple fact that they're Black, but also you have a situation they're Black and disabled. But as I'm listening to my brothers drop the jewels, I personally believe, I agree in the same manner that it's not about education. It's not about understanding. And I have to agree with the acceptance piece, because that's really all it can be at this particular point, because we've done enough trainings for police officers. Literally all summer was a symbolic gesture of progress to allow us to believe that there was going to be a breakthrough, and the breakthrough would happen as soon as we walk Donald Trump outside of the presidency. And then we would formulate under this new regime with a president that is not as racist as Trump. We will open up the doors of freedom, and we will denounce the ideas of racism. We will now go back to the Obama eras of this idea of post-racism, right? And it was such a joke and a farce to me, even though I pushed the idea of voting, because I felt it's in a right for our people. Our ancestors died for us to vote, but our ancestors didn't die for us to be stupid with our vote. Let's be very clear. So I wasn't telling a person to say, you have to do Biden. I wasn't telling a person, you have to do Trump. I'm saying that locally, if you are not voting, you do not care about the school systems. You don't care about the roadways. You don't care about the taxes that will be hit on jobs. You don't personally care about your space, so you can't complain. We educated folks with our Trap the Vote team. Shouts out to them, because at the end of the day, we have to realize that the voting capacity locally, it affects us a lot more than it does nationally. But that's just one frame of the conversation. So as we dive into what the summer looked like, again, when we talk about the education part, and King, you said, we have to go ahead and start doing these forms with police and these educations. And brother, I'm telling you, I was doing that in 2013, 2014, 2015. And I'm here to tell you, it does not work, because Black people can no longer come to a table that's not set for us, where we have nothing to add to the menu besides be a part of the menu, where we're not in the back of the kitchen processing the food. We can't show up invited or inviting those who know exactly what they need to do. All you have to do to change the idea of policing in America against black people is, as soon as a police officer does something to a black person that is not under their bylaws in a police bill of rights, their consequences are varies. If you shoot an unarmed black person, immediately you're fired. You no longer can hold the badge. That's it. Yes, we know, mistake. You thought he had this. You thought she had that. But you can't be a police officer. You need to find another profession. Now, if you are found guilty of killing an unarmed black person, now you, just like any normal citizen, will be due the right consequence, whether that's life in jail, whether that's 10 to 15 years. But as a police officer, you should be looked at, because tax dollars of our own is being given for them to make wise and sound decisions, as well as we go back into the training. Billions and millions of dollars go into what? Training police officers every day. So this idea of more training and more education is a farce. It's a lie. Sitting down with a bunch of robotic individuals who understand the basis of their origin, which they are slave catchers, and they look at us as criminals, and they often look at us as the problem, you will never satisfy the conversation on the community end, because I dare go into another conversation when police are telling us we need to do things to change their attitudes towards them. That's a no-go. That's a powerless conversation. And all it does, it feeds the police apologists who apologize for police brutality. It pleases public officials who want to be voted in and want to seem as if they're ahead of the conversation. But mind you, these conversations have gone on often enough. And the last part of that is, if black people literally shot back at police officers or hunted down police officers that killed innocent black people, you would have no more police brutality. Because as our great ancestors, the Black Panthers, as communities were being brutalized by police, they showed up to the state capitol building that I'm at, right, with their guns and was ready. And just to let them know that we would fire back and we will arm ourselves to protect ourselves by police brutality. And then, you know, the laws that they push to make sure black people will never show up at the Capitol with guns again. So I think this idea, oftentimes, that we plague ourselves with as black people, as if we're really truly making progress. And I'm sorry to say, we have not. Now, individually, we have made great strides. But if we're talking about a collective, we are worse off as a collective than we were in the 60s and 50s, or even in enslavement. This is why. When you go back to the Montgomery boycott, the most powerful component of that Montgomery boycott, what was powerful and what was disappointing, two things. The most powerful thing is they did that for over a year. Black people said, economically, we know how important we are to the buses here in Alabama. So we ain't going. The Negro had no choice. Be very clear. The Negro had no choice. So even if you were like, it's about 5 miles for me to walk, I just want to jump on the bus, get the 5. The Negroes looked at like, okay, Johnny, you get on that bus. The white boys and girls gonna be like, ain't y'all niggas having a boycott? You ain't supposed to be on here, Johnny. They gonna beat your butt to every stop until you get to yours, and they're gonna throw you off. So the reality of a Negro stepping across that line could be death or brutality. Bottom line. The reality of what it is today, when we talk about collective and individualism, a Negro can protest when it's cool, and protest when it's trendy, protest when all people are watching and I want to seem like a revolutionary, but then the brutality is continued, but the trend is kind of past due, you can go back to normal. Because guess what? I have a cush state job. Guess what? I'm an NBA player that's making a phenomenal amount of money, more than the average person. Guess what? I'm a hip hop artist. I get paid to act ignorant. There is no longer a collective of black people to where it didn't matter if you was Muhammad Ali. If a Muhammad Ali Negro got on the bus, that Negro would get dealt like if he was JoJo, who's a nobody. This is the difference between. There was a lot more to lose back then than there is now. The Negro is more comfortable because white America has accepted a certain class of Negroes. And the certain class of Negroes no longer has that connection with the community, because a Jackie Robinson Negro back in those days still lived in the same black community. He wasn't able to go to the luxuries of a white community that may have more of the glam, lights, and all of the bells and whistles. So you had to stay in the same community as the dealers, the same community as your hustlers, the same communities as your doctors and lawyers. We were all in the same grant. The unfortunate part of what we did not do outside of the Montgomery boycott, we did not create our own bus system. And if we had our busing system, we didn't fortify it to make sure the busing system wouldn't necessarily be segregated, but it wouldn't be fortified to make sure we felt like we had to have no other options. So now the simple fact that we did not create our own has pushed us back, because now in this idea of integration, which was one of the biggest failures of black leadership during that time, we allowed ourselves to feel, well, you know what, we want to be equal people. So being equal people means what? Being a part of their system. And you can't be a part of a system that doesn't really recognize you as a human being. You're still 3/5. You're still considered property. And in the same sense of property, you're considered superhuman. With our melanated skin, we're not even considered to be normal beings. Because when white folks was doing all those tests and they didn't understand how we could do A, B, C, how could they create these pyramids? How can they do this? How can they civilize civilization? The reality for them was like, they can't be human. They gotta be aliens. So the idea for us as black people, I think we get so caught up into thinking these politicians are going to be the saviors to our plight, when these politicians have been not only cowards, but the politicians, especially looking just like our own skin, have actually been the detriment to our build. Because again, we go back to the collective versus the individual. I now will be accepted in white America if I do A, B, and C. And I can now live in white American areas. I can now hang out with white Americans without being ostracized. Back then, yeah, there were some niggas that hung out. You had Sammy Davis was hanging out with the Rat Pack, but that was few and far. And now you have it where really a black man and a black woman can marry a white person and an Asian person. And, you know, a couple niggas might look at you and be like, eh. But reality, society will not put you under the doormat as they did once before. So a black person has a choice. Do I live in can I live in this hooded community, or do I pay a couple more dollars and live into this more gated community or a more diverse idea of a community? We have these choices. So in these fights that we have, I can't blame these public officials who are going to move by the dollars. When the Asian community wants something, what they do, they put their money where their mouth is. When the LGBTQ want something done, what they do, put their money where their mouth is. When the Latino community wants something do, what they do, put their money where their mouth is. And they make sure their money talks. Our money don't talk because we have not organized readily enough to figure out what as a collective do we all want. We keep yelling equality. That can't happen. We keep yelling liberation. That can't happen. We keep yelling freedom. That can't happen. Why? Because it's ideas that we all have no longer connect in a way that it did before, because we oftentimes have become so comfortable with white supremacy. We oftentimes look at white supremacy or just this white idea of coming in. Perfect example. I thought a few years ago we were like, forget the Oscars. A few years later, give a few Negroes the Oscars, especially a Spike Lee Negro who said Oscar so white, coined the phrase with a few others. As soon as they said, hey, Spike, we're thinking about giving you an offer. Oscar, he's right there. Okay, next thing you know, we're all back to the award shows. It's like Black people have gotten so captivated by white ice that our black ice is not cold enough. And that becomes a proclamation to all other problems that fold in our disability to not only interrupt, but disconnect from this white ideology that has been given to us, that we've accepted this European way of living, that our multiple disabilities in our community are sexism, colorism, racism, and all these other isms that come into play. Because how dare we, and I'm in all solidarity with my Asian community, I support that. I have two nephews that are half Asian. But how dare we have solidarity with the Asian issues of hate? But we have yet, as a whole Black community, addressed the Black women and children that are being killed on the daily by Black men. How dare we? That is, again, another disability for us to have the ability to look at the issues happening and affecting our own and saying, holy smokes, before I can get with the Asian situation, I got to go start checking some Negroes and say, hey, brother, let's do a mental health checkup. Hey, you know what? That's my sister. Hey, you know what? Let me, here's this therapist card. Let's go holler. Or say directly to these people of power, brothers need some help. Sisters need some help. We need counseling, because too long the Black man and woman has been told one thing: you are resilient. You don't have trauma. In the last 5 years, Black people have just started identifying the idea of traumatic moments in their past, current, as being something that triggers their actions. We're just now talking about that 5 years from where we should have been talking about trauma every single time something traumatic happened to Black people. But we were told to be so resilient. We were told, you're so strong. That's why they look at us as non-human. Because how can a people that has gone through Reconstruction, we've gone through enslavement, we've gone through mass incarcerations, the war on drugs, aka the war on Black people, the civil rights movement. We can talk about all these different things, redlining, gentrification. We can talk about the list of lists and lists. And how are we still here? These are the kind of things that we have to just sit there and, understand. We talk about us being disabled as a people. It's so physical as well as it is mental. And as a disabled American, when you think about it, a disabled African American, he faces the same atrocities as one who, again, can use all his limbs with police brutality. This is why we call defund the police. We're saying that we don't need police officers to go into situations when so many disabled African Americans have been killed by police because of the way they engage the situation. And when we say defund, we're saying utilize that investment into other programming or other resources that can develop into making sure that there will be more healthier outcomes instead of deadlier outcomes. These ideas we have to press, and we have to continue to have these mindful conversations, but be very mindful those we continue to ask to change their ways. The reason why they won't is because we have not disconnected from them. Last part, when the NBA players walked away, I said this in 2014. Love, hold on real quick. Hey, turn off the right. I said this in 2014. Let me give framework. 2014, turn off the rights, please. 2014, you had Donald Sterling, who made those racist remarks about NBA players and his Clippers and things of that nature. Donald Sterling at that time was the Clippers owner. I remember having a group conversation. I had a few days, prior to that, with my young people called MOB, Motivating Other Brothers, and I was saying to them young people about what the NBA players should have done to show power, because Black people have not showed their power in extreme forms, and that's why they continue to kill us. That's why they continue to dispose of us. That's why they don't listen to us, because they like, so what you niggas gonna do? Because Black people have been in a domestic violence relationship with white America for so often, we have got complicit to it ourselves, and it's just kind of dealing with it just like any domestic abuse relationship. When you wonder why she ain't left or he ain't left, well, you just start getting used to it. Like, I'm just going to get my ass kicked, and so here I am. So I said to the young men, as I was disappointed in the moment that the Clippers and the Warriors, in a moment of solidarity, they had their jerseys or whatever flipped over, and they said, hey, this is our quote-unquote protest. I said to them in 2014 as we met, I said, the most powerful thing for them niggas that would have happened, that would have changed the effect of so much that is currently happening for Black America in a whole, is if them Negroes walked away and didn't show up and created a boycott. And of course, I utilized a correlation of the boycott in Alabama, as I spoke on. And now in 2020, you saw something to that effect, but it was ineffective in so many different ways because, one, the moment was a moment that everybody did a symbolic gesture. So it wasn't powerful because you had police taking knees. You had Congress wearing kente cloth. You had everybody hoping and praying, whatever they did to appease. You had Black Lives Matter making cuckoo bucks. You had people starting to talk about that Black Lives Matter group. Those organizations, I love them. Where before they tried to create them as terrorist groups. So you had a trending topic where it took away the validity of what those NBA players did. But in that moment, if they had walked away during Donald Sterling, when it was not trendy, when it was not popular, when it would have made people so uncomfortable, because at that time, we still hadn't got triggered by Mike Brown. We just was about to come across the Trayvon Martin. We still didn't hit Mike Brown. After that happened, you saw a spiral of police brutality, police terror happening like never seen before, because now we have the weapons of mass destruction, aka the cell phones, to videotape and see it all. I say the power could have been in that moment because white America needs to realize that if Black people decided to shut down their economy, if economically we punch them in places where we control, which is we control the floor of the NBA, we don't control the bureaucracy. But see, without the floor, the bureaucracy can't work. So what I'm saying is without the players, you can't have an NBA. Without the players, you can't have an NFL. If those players had boycotted that and said, you know what, we ain't finna have no racist dude say anything. And I guarantee you, most of those players already knew how racist Donald Sterling is because most Negroes are working for a racist person, and they just working for a racist person because they ain't got no balls to go somewhere and build their own, right? That's why they're going to continue to work with a racist person. As long as you don't know that they're racist, a Negro will be okay with it because they're getting a check. Had they had done that, I guarantee you, we would be talking about something totally different in 2021. Why? Because the ill effects of what the boycott did for a whole year economically hit America in its pockets, where it's like, okay, whatever you Negroes want. You want segregation? Boom. And the simple fact that in 2014, them Negroes, when it wasn't popular, those Negroes, when nobody was protesting to the level that people are protesting right now, would have done something like that, it would have set a landmark of, wow, these Negroes are together in this way still, that individuals like ourselves who are talking about this, we can walk into any bank and ask them for a freaking loan of any proportion because they would already know Negroes will shut shit down. We shut it down in a way that it only moves the needle economically a little bit. But in a way of why we're not together as a collective, too many Black individuals have become rich off of white supremacy. So why would they, as they would like to say, fuck up the check? Excuse my language, but I had to say it like that. Because that's the reality. We live in a reality that Black capitalism has trumped Black consciousness or the elevation of Black power, in a sense where Black people are taking the power back and setting up our own. We don't have Negroes fighting for reparations. Why? Because Negroes is getting reparations every time they suit up for NBA or football. Why would we care about reparations? You won't have an idea of Negroes caring about what's going on in the hood. I don't live there no more. I'm going to come over here, give some Negroes some turkeys, come to Christmas, give some kids some bikes, and I'm out of here. What do I need to build out of there for? I'm over here in Calabasas, you know what I'm saying? Hanging out with the Kardashians. I don't care about the Negroes' plight in that manner. So this fake idea that's renaissance in an idea of fake symbolism is what is towering over us right now as Black people. And we are disabled in that nature that collectively we aren't together.
Oh my God. All I can say is that's a drop the mic moment. I'm just gonna drop the mic.
Hey, that was tough. Listen, that was tough. Listen, that was tough coming behind these brothers. I'm just gonna be honest. That was tough. So if I'm getting some kudos,
You solid though. You solid.
I'm gonna have to drop the mic right there, my brother. Like, that's a mic drop. You know, in the hood, we call it mic. That's a mic drop.
I was hearing what was coming on. I said, man, I'm texting Queen. Let me just flip this, because I'm gonna figure it out. But we're gonna talk about the disabilities of our community and how it correlates. So
Thank you.
I think that was perfect. But I want to tell y'all, you know, this conversation is important. And I want people out there to understand that's why both sides of the conversation this is what this is about. Having the stigma conversation, having the taboo conversation. And we have allies watching. And I keep announcing it. We welcome our allies. Nothing in the movement happened out without our allies. But again, when you come into this space, you got to understand we're going to give it to you raw. We're going to give it to you uncut. Sometimes the language is going to be colorful. But you need to hear it, because our job is to help change this narrative. But you got to hear from our voices. You got to hear from the people who are living it, having this experience. Because if you don't hear the experience and you don't understand the life of it, you're not going to have the compassion. You're not going to have the empathy. You're not going to have the concern and what you need to do. See, because it takes everybody to put this thing together. But this conversation is so powerful, okay? And this is why, Barry, you push the meter up. My phone is blowing off over here. I got elected officials. I got people hitting me like, hey, I got somebody. We're going to deal with this. Because there are allies who believe in what's being said and understand the frustration and some of the issues. And they're willing to reach out to help. So again, if we don't have the conversations, if we don't understand what's going on, we can't support and help. It's not always about a complaint. It's about sometimes getting the message out to the community and to the people who needs to hear. Because sometimes our elected officials, we understand they get busy too. We understand some of these city department leaders is not always involved like they need to. So sometimes it takes this difficult conversation to rub people the wrong way. Sometimes it takes these conversations to lift the light to another, because this is our job as community. Because it's one thing to have CNN and the news come tell a story. But it's one thing when we got brothers and sisters that look like us telling a story to our community. This is what our people need. This is the support we need. And maybe this level of conversation will wake up the consciousness of our people to understand the struggles and understand that the fight is not over. Solidarity is not where it needs to be. And the level of compassion is not there. We got to put it all together to really push this change forward. And we're going to make this happen. And I got y'all. So here's the deal. We got about 5 minutes left on the official time. But I know this conversation is so powerful. We could go over just a little bit. And if anybody got to leave, I understand. But there's still some things that need to be touched. I know Danielle has a question. I know Jamil has a question. I'm sure James has some. So what I'm going to do is let everybody get their question out. Let's try to answer it. And then I want to give everybody a few minutes before we close out to give some lasting words to the community. This is your opportunity to tell our allies, tell some of our elected officials, tell some of these organizations and some of these leaders who really need to hear what you have to say, lead them with some lasting impression words. And this is why this Sunday conversation is so important. I want everybody to understand this. I know it's Sunday and this is typically family time. This is typically church time. This is typically a time we don't want to have these type of conversations, but it's important because if you drive the spirit and the level of consciousness and you get people moving, See, they go to work Monday morning and they go start thinking about what happened yesterday and how they go do a better job to make sure that our people in the disability community gets what they need. So that's why these conversations are important on Sunday. It's important for the community. I'm glad you all are here to give up your insight and some of the perspectives that you're dealing with, because you're telling your story so people can live and envision themselves having to be in the position that you all are, and that wakes people up and make them think in different ways. So with that being said, Danielle, go ahead and ask your question, then
Yes.
Jamil, and then we go around and get everybody, and then we go roll out of here.
Yes, thanks for that. I love our show. We get to really talk openly about this. So, a lot of gems were dropped. Barry dropped a lot of gems, but one thing that he mentioned was self-sufficiency and economic independence. And so as an educator myself, I was thinking about some of our young people, African Americans with disabilities in the classroom, and some of the challenges that they're facing in special education and the broken system there. And I know a lot of people around, maybe not enough, but there are definitely people across America, a lot of Black educators that were tired of seeing discrimination with our African American students with disabilities, or some just misclassified that have disabilities in education, in special education, and they started their own schools. So one of the things that you mentioned about one of the things that definitely is going to help our communities is that economic independence and just going out on our own and creating our own systems on how we want to do things. And I definitely thought about the young people with disabilities in the classroom, because we certainly cannot forget about that. Disability it's a huge topic. We can't just talk about the physical disabilities, definitely mental disabilities, and we can't forget about our youth that are facing that. So please, anyone, there are a lot of resources out there on helping African American kids and the school parents. Please get involved, advocate for your kid. Because it's just a lot of decisions that are being made that I've seen with one of the things too that I've seen as an educator, and some of the disparities is, some of our white students, if they have disabilities, they're given all these resources. Everybody comes to the table and it helps them and gives them aid. They're giving a lot of aid and resources. They have so many teachers and tutors that are coming around and helping them, and our African American student with disabilities and challenges just do not have that support, So I feel like I'm kind of closing out, but I just wanted to say that, and but thanks again, Barry.
Oh no, but this is something real, and I know one of the folks, they said that this was supposed to be about the disabilities. I'm not versed in the disabled community in the sense of working with folks and advocating for them. I'm more or less on the ground, and all things that are connected to Black folk is something that I am versed in. But at the same particular time, just to add content of how I correlate our disabilities physically, mentally, and whatever with what's going on, is kind of where my process was for the I saw one folk was talking about moving out of topic. I just want to get centered in that. So that's what I did to just best come into looking at why all of those facets relate to our plight. But when you're saying that, Danielle, about the disabilities that our African Americans deal with in the classrooms, right then and there is such a huge issue, because this right there destroys our community. Because so often, and me being an African American young man that had disabilities in the classroom in a particular time, the word disability makes a young Black person thinks I'm retarded. So I don't want to be placed in this disability classroom. So the wording by itself makes you freak out and be like, I'm normal. Like, there's no disabilities in me, but your learning functions might not be as advanced or might not be a par to everybody else. So right then and there, you hide behind that scope in the language. So when we don't get the needs that a lot of our white counterparts do get, right? When it's looked at and it's shaped where they're having struggles in the classroom, not where you're coming to a Black household, you're stupid, you're retarded, you're dumb. How do you think a black kid is going to go walk in to any place that's disabled and he's considered to be a cool kid and going to be okay with that? Right there, our collective is destroyed by our own selves doing us in. Getting, like we used to call it, people getting clowned, people capping. You know, they're capping on each other like, oh, that Negro, he hang out with the retarded kids. These kind of different things, it stops a young African-American person to even get the help they need because it's centered with all bad things outside of it's truly going to be helpful. Where with white America, it's looked at as helpful, just like when we think about the war on drugs. The war on drugs, we locking all you Negroes up, all you Negroes, you are the reason why you're smoking crack. The war on opioids, oh my God. Sydney is on opioids and we're going to put her in this nice facility. And I really want these people to go to jail. You got drug dealers going to jail immediately if there's an opioid overdose, where black folks in the communities were able to hustle until the government found out and said, all right, now let's go get them. But you've already poisoned millions of black people already and created about 1,000 drug dealers. So I feel how you worded it is something awesome and courageous, because we definitely have to go in there a lot deeper and figure out different wording for our young African-American students to get that help what they need.
And I want to just,
I'm
sorry, I want to clarify, sorry to cut you, I want to clarify something, because that term, I say disabilities, but that is an old term. In the classroom, yeah. We say special needs, but there is something.
That's even bad too.
Right. No,
special needs, I might as well say disabilities. It all does not sound good.
No, I understand. And I'm just saying, even with the name change, we have some of the same groups, because they clearly know they're being segregated from some of their peers. But also, I mean, that terminology is still used in our laws, right? It's still something called the Individual Disabilities Act. So it's not a retired word.
I guess you know what? I think that a term like gifted students of practice, something like that, to give you more incentive, because think about some of the young people that have special needs. There are some of the most gifted students, right? The most gifted students in other things, right? It just becomes a word play, again, when we create our own narrative that has hurt and has just decapitated so many people. I could have been done at an early age if I played into my disabilities or I played into my special challenges. I could have been done. But I had to figure out a way.
I want to say this, and I respectfully disagree with Kathleen about what the topic was promoted. Again, we're telling our narrative. I get some parts went to the other way, but this is who we are. Okay, I'm not changing that for nobody. These conversations sometimes go left because that's how we do it. We keep it real on here. This is real talk. Everybody want to talk about keep it real. We keep it real at both sides of the conversation, and all of these intersections cross together, because it's one thing that's being said that keeps me, no matter which way the conversation to go. There's an unfair, unjust inequality that's happening to our people. Regardless if you're disabled, whether you're a young black male, young black woman, we are all faced with the same issues. These intersections all meet together. But again, it's all out of respect. And Kathleen, we're going to continue these conversations. I would like you to come join as a panelist. Because see, a lot of times what happens is while we reaching out to the community to have these conversations, nobody want to pull up and be on here to have a conversation. And this is not a shot at Kathleen, but I know what happens out here. See, everybody want to stand back and wait to see what happened. And then when we start the conversation, everybody want to throw their shot in, some of our allies, and they want to do all of this. But we ain't going to do that over here at both sides of the conversation. You want to join the conversation, come on in, and we can have this conversation. We're going to keep these conversations going. But again, this is our space. We are controlling our narrative. We telling the story from our views. And again, there's a common conversation in the black and brown community. We are being unjust, dealt with on all levels when it comes to this equality and equity issue and inclusion issue. It all stems from systemic racism, and it is being put out there for our people. And I'm tired of this. We see all of this prosperity stuff. There's not prosperity in the black and brown community. Okay, so we got to stop acting like we're equal to others. We're not getting treated fair. That's just what it is. Okay, but these intersections meet, and we're not going to stop these conversations. We're going to keep on hammering on. And I see Kathleen coming. She says she's ready. Come on, sister, because I want you on here, because I love everybody. And again, We're going to keep talking about these different disabilities. The guests that we had here deal with it. A lot of them, Wayne, Jamil, and James, wheelchair bound. I understand, and I hope community understands there's more than just wheelchair bound as a disability. Some of it is not physical. You can't see it. Some of it is mental. Some of it is internal. But again, we're going to treat everybody with respect. But I invite you to come on for these conversations that we're having, because this is not the only conversation, that we're going to continue to keep having these conversations with these stigmas and with all of this stuff. And mental health is another one. You know, nobody wants to deal with this mental health thing, but that's another conversation that we're going to have. But please reach out to us. If you want to be a part of these conversations, go to our website. You can sign up as a guest. You see some of the topics coming up in the future and you feel like you want to be a part of it, please reach out to us. We're more than willing to have the conversation. I'm not an expert in everything. I don't understand everything. I'm not a lawyer. But what I can do is give you my perspective, what I've done, what I've dealt with, what I've seen. And I can ask individuals like these brothers on here today who experienced stuff and been through stuff to come on and tell their perspective. And then we get our elected officials and some of our city leadership to come on, and they can tell their side, and then we can put a conversation together with everybody and figure out how we move forward as solidarity in the community, from the elected officials to the community. I think that's where it all starts. But Jamil, go ahead and jump in there, because I know you wanted to say something as we start wrapping this up.
Yeah, Danielle mentioned the kids, right? And I had actually reached out to someone that worked with kids so they can come on. I don't know if you work with kids or not, but I did reach out to someone. You do? Okay. Yeah. Because, you know, I had them in mind. And John, you don't have to be nice to my mother like that. I you know, now, so.
I thought that was her. I thought it was.
You know how your mom just be all in you, you know, she all right. She my biggest cheerleader, right? Hey, but I gotta say, for the record, my work focus on equity and inclusion and access. That's where that came from. It's not, but you know, it's whatever my mom says right now. So, but that's what I focus on, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. James focus, you know, he has a particular focus. He's strong in that area. So I just want to, and I can close out now because I know we're going over time. But I just want to say that the brother, everything he was saying, family, it goes back to what I addressed initially. There's a direct correlation between Black people, racism, and disability. So while he may have been talking about all that, I'm hearing it from the perspective of a disabled person. So when he talked about, just to put it together, Danielle, John, when he talked about the NBA and how they had an opportunity, but there's a group that was being fed. It's like I said about this is not a shot at anybody, but just putting it in context. When I say we have to deal with our family, that's our community, not just our brother, sister, uncle, internally, because some of us are fed. They're not feeding the masses. And I've been on more than one occasion been offered food. And I'm saying, well, you know, I can eat, but what does that do for the masses? I'm one man. You could feed me, but then the problem is still there. So it comes down not to understanding again, but acceptance and sincerity. And sincerity. Some people are in these positions for themselves. Now, I'm going to say, and this goes back to what the brother was saying. What he was talking about, again, is code of conduct amongst us.
Put all the sauce in.
It's a code of conduct. When he was talking about the bus, if whoever didn't jump on got dealt with, I relate to that. If you don't back your people, If you don't back me, if you're in a position, John, you have a platform, or Danielle, she's a school teacher or something of that effect. If I come to you about access and inclusion, and you shun me because it means putting yourself out a little bit, or making you uncomfortable, or you feeling like you don't want to stir up your situation, that's the same thing he was talking about. And that's what we deal with. So when I say it's not just being Black, but throw a disability on top of that, you're fighting levels and layers of this. And it's treacherous within our community. It's not about browbeating people, but it's to say, if we're going to be honest and really have some honest dialogue, we got to look at ourselves. Because we all have people with mental developmental issues, with disability issues, with mental health issues in our family, and we know it. Now, how am I treating that person? I can start there. I don't have to start by getting on a large platform and I ain't saying be a kumbaya. Yeah, I'm going to be all for the people. I'm saying, I understand this is out of your comfort zone. It's uncomfortable. Why don't you start with the person you can touch? Why don't you start there? And we build from that. But if we can't even acknowledge that that's a problem, how are we going to deal with something when we don't even want to acknowledge that it exists? Because we're being fed as individuals. It ain't but 20 people in San Francisco. 6 of them is on this screen right now. Right? I mean, that's all we got. But we're fighting that. And that's what he was talking about the code of conduct, about the NBA and them feeding themselves. So I got to fight through. James has to fight through. I have to fight for not my condition as a person with a disability, but as a Black person. Then I have to fight for my condition as a person in a wheelchair. Right? It's not enough. It's not enough that I, as an individual, John, Daniel, James, Barry, it's not enough at that just I, as an individual, eat. It's not enough. You know, oh, you look so good. Oh, you do so well. Oh, you do that. Well, you know what? I had a village too. They gave me a foundation that I still stand on. My family. Through all the bad, the ups, the downs, the likes, and it didn't matter. So who am I to sit here comfortable, not concerned with some of the things that my peers are challenged with and not say anything? Right? I have to speak up on that. And I have to be honest when I open my mouth about it, that yes, there's some internal bias clearly from within our community when it comes to people with disabilities, point blank, period. It ain't nothing else to it. And whether someone is going to accept it or not is going to require the masses. Like the brother was saying, I'm making the correlation to what he's saying and what our struggle is. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. So I just want to point that out, that it wasn't off script. Racism and ableism go hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. One cannot function without the other. It's the cooperation of those being fed that's fueling the discrimination and continuing the bias against people with disabilities. It's fueling that. You're feeding it. So, you know, I'm going to end on that note, because this is only a series right now. This is series.
We gonna keep this conversation going.
Right.
We're gonna keep this conversation going. I see some of the conversations going.
Don't water it down, man. Don't water it down. Don't water it down.
Can I just say something before you close out? I just want to say one thing.
No, hold on. I'm just saying something because I got some comments in here. We will continue this conversation. This is not the first one and done conversation. I see people reaching out. If you're a person, you feel you've been discriminated with your disability, if you go to our website, we have a community partner. He has a law firm in Sacramento, Justin Ward, Ward Association. If you feel you've been discriminated, you need some legal help. I see people putting stuff in about legal help. Reach out to go on our website. It's a brother. He came on our show. Go to our YouTube. You can go back and look at some of the conversations and presentations he did for us. His name is Justin Ward. He's an attorney at law. He's in Sacramento. Good brother. Look on our website. He's one of our community partners, the Ward Association. If you're dealing with some discrimination or you feel like you need some legal support, I'm not a lawyer. I can't give you legal advice. But we have a brother, Justin Ward. Look on our website. Go to our community partners. Click on his link. All you got to do is click on it. You don't have to write nothing down. Just look under where it says Ward Association. Go ahead and give him a call. Set up a consultation. He's a legal attorney. He could give you all the advice you need. I'm not an attorney. I'm just here to represent. And I'm appreciating everybody this conversation. I know we're a little late. If anybody got to leave, just go ahead and back out. But I want James to go ahead and say his last words, and then Barry, and then I'm going to close the show out. I'm sorry we over everybody. I try to commit to the 4 o'clock. But when we have kings and queens talking about these topics that are important, and again, I'm going to say it again, we have to wake up our level of consciousness in our community about people that's dealing with disabilities. We have to continue this education. I know Barry said other, but we have to educate people because sometimes we just go about our days and we don't think about these little things. And that's why these conversations are important. And let's keep the conversation going. But go ahead, James, jump in there, and then Barry. And then Jamil, if you got anything else, we'll close this baby out.
All right, mine's relatively quick because we're closing out. I just wanted to highlight the whole reason of me coming on here. An article was written in the San Francisco Examiner right here. Laura Waxman, just Google James Johnson, San Francisco Examiner. This is a template, a platform. I mean, she literally busted San Francisco Department of Homelessness doing so many foul things, and it still exists right now because I'm living in the building. I could have been left. But the reason why I didn't leave, because I'm not leaving until they correct it. For me and all these other African-American descendants of slavery that they have funneled through the system, we need buildings like this that are African-American descendants of slavery management companies, but we have none. There are no options. I have to go and watch other communities. These buildings are all Hispanic, all Asian, and all white. And all the people that work for them, bigger positions, associate managers, all that is $385 million funneled a year into this system. And we do not have not one building, but there are over, I think, 70 buildings in the lower San Francisco area that are in violations of the law, where black men, probably 40 or 50% of the disabled people in this system are African-American descendants of slavery, and they can't live nowhere else in San Francisco. But anyway, check this article out. Hey, I'm willing anytime. You can catch me on Facebook, James Johnson as Mr. Despicable. I'm not playing. I'm not trying to talk. I'm only about one thing. They got to correct what was done to our people. They have ushered in a new San Francisco. Right in front of our face. We went from 125,000 residents to less than 30-something thousand. So I'm not trying to hear it.
So there's people.
I'm done. Thank you.
There's a number of people in the chat asking about the link for your article. For all you guys are watching, there goes his email address. Email him directly. He could give you the link. That's his information. I don't have time to get the link and put it in there.
Examiner.
That's his email address. That's how you get about him. He's on Facebook. He's always talking about some of the issues that we have in the city. And I know sometimes people don't like it, but we got to call out these issues. We have to fix this system, and it's important. And I'm glad community is starting to wake up and they seeing that, hey, I didn't know this was going on. I know a lot of people are not into the news. A lot of people don't know what's going on. And that's why it's important for places like both sides of the conversation that's helping change the narrative, have these conversations so that our community gets it and they understand what's going in. And when we end these meetings, we can definitely have a little bit of a discernment and understanding and make sure that we get the changes we need for our people, and it's real. And that's just what it is. We're gonna keep it real here. We ain't trying to be corporate and bougie on here. We're not trying to be unapologetically black. We're gonna keep this stuff real to the streets, boots on the ground with our people. Our people. We ain't changing for nobody. We're gonna keep this stuff real and make sure our people get what's needed. It starts with unity, it starts with solidarity, like you said, in our community, us for us. We got to stick together. For us, by us, everything that we're pushing and moving. We got to keep that movement, we got to keep that energy and make sure that our people are taken care just as well, because we know black folks. We would definitely take care of everybody else and apologize to everybody else, but we don't apologize to each other. Mental health is real. We have to make it cool. We got to get in our schools. And I understand we have this crisis system that they put in place in San Francisco to deal with immediate crisis, but we need another mental health service that's going to give us long-term sustainability, mental health interaction with our community for the future. So go ahead, Mr. B, get up in there and do your thing, brother.
Man, again, I appreciate it. I'm happy that I was able to add some fire, to this pot that we're brewing. I just want to be very mindful. All respect to my king brother and queen sister that is hosting us, but I want to be very mindful about one thing, brother. You can't change or fix a system that wasn't designed for us. We have to be able to create and design our own system. That is what everyone has done when they've immigrated here in America. They changed the system within a system. The Asian culture and the Asian community, why there has been this newfound fascination with this idea of Asian hate, is Asian folks have all said, you know what, we've been a system within the system, but now we're getting some things that are happening in our community and we're all going to come together. So that's every Asian that is significant under that umbrella coming together, and they ain't hearing nothing but Asian hate. Though there's been anti-blackness in the Asian community, though Asians have taken over industries of African Americans and won't allow us to get into the beauty industry, won't allow us to be able to endeavor and open up hair shops and things of that nature, which is I'm going to put on us. But the reality is a lot of those folks, they definitely do. Hold on a second. I got to go put my. They definitely do things that create. Put the battery in. They do definitely do things that create a situation where it gives us the inability to get involved in some of those industries that they've monopolized. I say this because I think we are seeing from this COVID, the American system as we know, disable, collapse within itself. Why save a burning house? I mean, we might as well go ahead and build that other house. And remember our great brother MLK, the speeches and the conversations they don't like to talk to us about is when he said, I think, I believe I led us to a burning house. So if our brother MLK Jr. said it was a burning house, why in the hell do we want to extinguish it? You got to be very clear about that. I think that we have to have the ability to navigate the problems that are ongoing, not only ongoing, that won't ever stop, because there is no profit in supporting disabled Black people. There's no profit in supporting radicalized Black people. There is a profit that takes a talented Tim, Black person, and we can make millions and billions of dollars off of their talent and marginalize them, magnify their abilities, but never even care about their communities. There is a profit in that. I feel like what Black people seriously have to stop waiting for is white people to change colors. They're not going to do it. What we need to start doing is going back to the old ways of us doing stuff in a more collective basis. Because if we as a collective don't understand, King, you said it in such a dope articulation when you said everybody about eating. That was street terminology. I felt that, right? Like If I'm eating, you eating. You feel what I'm saying? We got to get back to the everybody eat mentality instead of that, nah, Negro, nobody eats. Like, that's the mentality of nobody eats. I got to be the only Negro. You can't and shouldn't want to be the only Negro in the room. You should want us to have a collective of brothers and sisters in that room. What I always tripped off of is the lack there of Black culture as well as Black restaurants in all the areas that here is more in, California, unfortunately, because you go everywhere else. You go to the South, you go to Texas, you go to New York, you'll see Negroes is we're gonna cook for each other. We're gonna do that. California is not as well diverse as it should be. And what trips me out about it is the competition level that we constantly are in. Instead of collaborations, we're in this competition, like me only, us first, da 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 da. How many Taco Rios can you have? I literally live in areas, right? This one particular area called Franklin Boulevard. And there's literally 30 up and down the road, 30 to probably 40 Taco Rios or some kind of version of Mexican food. You can't even barely find a Negro restaurant. And you got plenty of Black people out here. So in the basis of when we talk about an economic flow and an economic push, we have to get out of the mind frame that if there could be about 1,000 taquerias in 2 to 3 blocks of each other, we need to be able to say, if catfish is my thing, catfish is your thing, queen, well, guess what? I'm going to have a special Southern catfish and you're going to have a special Creole catfish. But guess what? We both going to have catfish. It's okay. It's okay for the level of competition to be there, but not a level of competition to be like, I don't want you to win. The level of competition has to be friendly, but in the same sense as, sis, I want you to win. Bro, I want you to win. Not I want to eliminate my competition, especially if they look like me. Because I don't understand how many times or what different you can do to a burrito. I don't know. What, do they grill the chicken differently? I mean, they got a different kind of sauce. And it's no disrespect to my Latino brothers and sisters, but it sometimes I'm envious of how do they figure out a way to be able to be in line with each other, to know their competition, but in the same way, competition is good, it's okay, it's better for business, but I will not try to take you out. I will try to make sure that you flourish, because if you win, that means we all win. So we have to get back to that we all win attitude, and that has to come from the top to the bottom. And when I say top to the bottom, those elected officials that look like us have to think and do for us. You can't just be Black in these spaces, because all skin folk ain't kinfolks. And just because they have a color of Black on their face, don't mean their heart is Black. So we have to be able to sit there and have this idea of win for all, and we are going to set a whole different a status quo when we look into the future, if we get back for that all for us, not all for self.
Oh man, powerful, powerful. Another mic drop, 2 in 1 show. Hey Barry, I just want you to know we got to connect with you.
Please do.
Everybody on here, I want, first of all, because I see what's going on in the chats, we're going to continue this conversation. It's going to be a 3-part series. I'm going to have my team to continue to reach out to some of these city officials, city departments. We want to have a conversation with them. And then we're going to bring everybody back with our city's officials, because now you guys address your issues, what's going on. They get an opportunity to respond and give out the resources. And then everybody should be calm enough to know what's going on and come back and have a real professional and elegant conversation without any disrespect. I think that'll be the best way to do it. But we'll do our end and get connected with them. We'll give them a second chance to respond. The heat is in the air. I'm getting the text messages. Stuff is flying around. We're going to make this happen, okay? But we need patience. But I need everybody to come back when it's time to come back. So I'm going to reach out to all you guys and make sure that you come back. But phenomenal conversation. Community, if you didn't feel the passion, the love, the frustration, and some of the emotions in this conversation, we got to have another conversation with you, because I'm fired up. And usually after these conversations, I'm trying to come down. But when you got brothers and sisters on here speaking and talking about the things that are affecting them, it affects me. because they don't get the same privilege we have when something goes wrong to just automatically make a U-turn and walk out and be able to do something else. Sometimes they're trapped and stuck in that situation, and that could be a mental health driving force, and that could be a disappointment. A lot of things is triggered when they don't get that support that's needed, and I'm hoping that we honed in on some of that and we got it. And I know there's a lot to these conversations. It's only 2 hours that we typically on. I try to be respectful to the community time. But again, I always respect my panelists. And when these conversations are moving the way they move, sometimes you need to hear what's being said. And we'll replay this. It'll be on our YouTube. It'll be on our website. We got further conversations coming up. The month of June, we're going to have a lot of man conversations. Okay. And I want you brothers to come on here. We're going to be talking about toxic masculinity, a lot of different things about young people. And I want you brothers on here because there's a big stigma in the community as well. When it's time to have a conversation, but we're going to have a conversation about some of this thing because we got to teach our young people. Right now. Listen, we got to have this conversation with our young people, okay, especially our young men, because our young brothers is killing each other. And we got this movement. I'm glad Barry said what he said because I'm on this movement. Kings supporting kings, queens supporting queens, and queens supporting kings. We got to keep this up, okay? I'm big in supporting my Black and brown businesses because I understand the more we support them and give them the economic power that they need, they'll be able to give people that look like us an opportunity, and we got to do it. Somebody has to lead by example. I'm not doing this for clout. I'm not doing this for recognition. We have to see it. Y'all know the community we come for. Nobody believes it until they see it, and it takes individuals like everyone on this panel to do their best to invest Black, spend money Black. That's what we have to do. We have to support the Black businesses, and we can't go in there asking for discounts. Okay, we go to the Gucci store, we go to the Birkin bag store, and we pay top dollars, and we don't ask for discounts. And I need my people in the community. Yes, it might be a little bit higher. And you can go on Amazon and get it for $3 cheaper. But again, we started from the ground up. Okay, Amazon have billions and billions and billions of people, so they have a larger access to drop the price. But when we support each other, we don't question about how much it costs. We help them out and support them. But again, as business owners, we have to give a product. We have to be there for services. We got to be professional in our work too. It's a double-sided coin, and making sure we support each other. I always support my Black and brown community. I will continue to do it. And I want you guys to get out there and start supporting me and Jamil. I got his Grind Time shirt. He got my Both Sides of Conversation hat. That's how it starts. Little interactions showing everybody. Hold on, let me get my Grind Time hat because they think I'll be supporting. I got to make sure I support my brother. You know what I'm saying? I got my Grind Time. You know what I'm saying? I always support my brothers, man. You know what I'm saying? Grind Time. And I'm going to support all my Black and brown businesses. But these conversations are going to keep happening. We're going to keep uplifting our community. And it starts with us here at Both Sides of Conversation. I want everybody to hold me accountable, because my job is here to make sure that our team seeks the vision and the mission of this organization to make sure we help change the narrative in our community. We make sure that we have the difficult conversations in our community, and we make sure it's from our voices. And today, what you heard was our voices. I don't need the corporate voice. I don't need the elected voice. I need our voice being heard from our people who are dealing with the struggle, living this every day, and making sure that they are being heard. And we support them together in solidarity to make sure that the changes that's needed happen. And we just go keep doing this. And it ain't going to stop. We go keep pushing this thing forward. And thank you for everybody that's been supporting us, making donations, helping out. It takes a village. It takes a community to have a platform, to have this communication that we need. Everybody's not going to have this conversation. Everybody's going to give you a watered down piece of it. But when you come here, we're going to keep it real, and we're going to talk like we family, like we sitting at the dinner table on Juneteenth or 4th of July, whatever we're going to do. And we're going to slap bones and have fun with these conversations moving forward. And that's what it's all about. So with that being said, I'm going to start closing this out here. We're going to go to our next segment, which is this Tuesday, where we have our hidden gems. We'll have another list of hidden gems coming on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. What we do is we highlight our Black and brown businesses, and we highlight community leaders, community advocates like these brothers on here. We highlight them so that community know who they are, where they at, what they're doing, how to get involved. Because I'm tired of people coming up saying, how do I get involved? How do I volunteer? We have a lot of people that's coming on that's doing phenomenal things in the community. And if you want to get part of their organization, or if you want to get part of our organization, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities open for community. We need to work together to build this up. We need to hear what's going on from our our voices. And then this Thursday, we're going to have another Educational Thursday. Every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m., we have an Educational Thursday segment where we have different professionals, different people from different backgrounds come on and do a PowerPoint presentation to help educate our community with things that we might not necessarily have the community information on. So this weekend, we have YCD. We have a guy coming on to teach about workforce development, giving the community information that they need to find out the upcoming jobs and opportunities. So that's going to be a phenomenal presentation this Thursday. And then next Sunday, we're going to have our Black educators come on and talk about some of the struggles and some of the issues that they're dealing with as teachers in the community, and some of these conversations about being disabled or disabled students with some of the Down syndrome, different things. We're going to have a full conversation with our Black educators. How do we as community support them? How do we advocate for them? How do we get our families engaged with the board process? So this should be a phenomenal conversation coming up next Sunday. And we're just going to keep this thing rolling. And we're just going to keep doing the things that we need to do to help impact our community the best we can. I know a lot of people have been reaching out to me. They frustrated. I can't make it to every event. I had 3 people text me yesterday. I need you to come to this. I only could do so much. So I'm trying to do the best I can and be patient. I can't be everywhere, but everybody's reaching out, calling, want me at all the events. I'm sorry. I can't be at everything, but I do my best, and I'm trying to get my team. We're trying to get some volunteers to come on board, to go to some of these events to help out community, because I know they want both sides of the conversation there. But I'm sorry for the people who've been reaching out, trying to get me. I am a one person. I only could do so much. And I apologize because there was people who wanted me to come to events that I couldn't make it. I just have so many events. I'm doing as much as I can. My team is doing as much as they can. And before I end, I just want to say thank you to all of the Both Sides of the Conversation team. They are doing a phenomenal job getting these shows together, helping our guests, doing stuff for the community. They are impacting our community in ways that's never been impacted. So thank you to our team, the Both Sides of the Conversation team, for their dedication, going out, recruiting our panelists, going out in the community, doing things, finding the things that we need to make this show better. And I'm just excited for some of the things that's going to be coming out in the future for us. This platform is only going to grow. We're only going to go up, as they say, all the way up. We're going all the way up with it, and we're going to keep impacting our people. And these topics, we're going to keep pushing them out. So if you're out there watching and you want to request a topic, because I know a lot of people say you guys haven't talked about this, or why you're not talking about this, you need to go to our website. There's a resource thing up there on our website. You click it. You could put recommend a topic on our front page. If you have a topic that you want to talk about, you think community needs to hear about on our Sunday conversation, please go to our website, enter your information and the topic, and you can also help recruit the people for that conversation so we can have those conversations so we don't meet them as well. So with that all being said, thank you, James. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Jamil. Thank you, Danielle, for coming on today. This was a powerful conversation. I hope the people that replay it have time to watch it later. I know a lot of our people on the East Coast watch it on Monday morning. This is a phenomenal conversation. Please be respectful out there, community. When you see people that have disabilities, support and help them. Have compassion. If you are one of those individuals working for any one of these state entities or one of these facilities or one of these programs, when we are getting complaints or they asking for grievances, please be respectful to them. Do it with integrity, do it with empathy, and make sure that you respond in a swift manner to make sure that they're getting heard and supported. And if you are a contractor and you have one of these contractors and it's your responsibility to make sure that the lifts are working or our ADA deep buttons is working, please have it in your heart to understand if those lifts and those ramps are not working, our people in wheelchairs are being affected tremendously. And that is an experience that they don't want to have to go through. And we don't want them to go through it as well here at Both Sides of the Conversation. So do your part. Community, do your part. When you're walking into a building, don't just press the handicap opener because it's there and it's easy to open a door, because a lot of them are battery operated. And we need to make sure that when the people in our wheelchair roll up and press them, they work, because some facilities, they don't have the facility management personnel to be there 24 hours. So do your due diligence. I know a lot of time people are holding coffee and they just like to bump up against the door opener to get in. Wait for somebody else or turn your back and push it in so that our people in wheelchairs has the access that they need. We have to support them, stand in solidarity with them. We're going to lead with love. We're going to lead with compassion, and we're going to put this thing together and we're going to further these conversations. So with that being said, we're going to end today's segment. Thank everybody for coming on, and we'll be seeing you guys on Tuesday night for our Hidden Gem segment. Have a blessed evening. Thanks for tuning in.